Good morning and welcome everyone. I'm Dr. Ashishman Mahapatra. I'm the Executive Director of Grid Council, and I shall be your moderator for the day. I welcome you all to this South Region Rare Disease Consultation, which is being organized by the State Government of Karnataka and the People to People Health Foundation. We are highly obliged to have our esteemed guests of honor, Honorable Chief Guest, eminent experts in the rare disease space. I also personally and as a team, I'm very excited to have you all enthusiastic participants for the discussions today. This is the third in the series of regional rare disease consultations. The objective of these technical discussions are to promote collaborations and partnerships and list priority actions for rare diseases. I'm also happy to share that even the United Nations member states have adopted a political declaration on universal health coverage that includes mention of rare diseases, and it's really very encouraging. So without any further delay, let's get into today's sessions. I would request Dr. M. Nayanarani, Child Health Advisor, Child Health Division, National Health Mission, Directorate of Government of Karnataka, for our opening remarks and welcome note. Over to you, madam.
Thank you, Mahapatra. Good morning, everyone. We from Government of Karnataka welcome you all to the South India Regional Consultation on Rare Diseases, which is jointly being organized by the Government of Karnataka and People to People Health Foundation. The Blueprint for Rare Diseases in India initiative is an attempt to enhance commitment to prioritize prevention, access, investment, and partnerships on rare diseases in India. We are very hopeful that the technical consultations and discussions will certainly help in identifying the best practices for scale-up, and the technical meetings will help to visualize and understand situations in which different actors and stakeholders influence particular outcomes. The field of rare diseases is complex, heterogeneous, continuously evolving, and suffers from a deficit of medical and scientific knowledge. However, global political declaration on the achievement of universal health coverage and India's commitment to ensure the same will certainly help in building resilient solutions for overall strengthening of policies and programs. Let's get to the most awaited discussions and just can't wait to hear the experts on the importance of genome sequencing, better prevention guidelines, and management solutions for rare diseases, and ways to promote collaborations and partnerships for the same. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much for that, setting the tone for today's discussions. I'd now request Dr. Lakshmikant Palo, CEO, People to People Health Foundation, for his opening remarks, and welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Mahapatra. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's South Region Consultation on the Blueprint for Rare Disease in India. And I would like to thank you all for your participation in this important consultation. And this is the third regional consultation in the series that we have been organizing since last couple of months. And we are very pleased to host this in collaboration with the Government of Karnataka and co-powered by TAFE and supported by Japan Embassy. Our associate strategic partners, LSDSS, ORDI, Cure SMS Foundation of India, and RDIF, and research partner, Grid Council, and knowledge partner, Institute of Child Health. I am grateful to the representation from Kerala and Tamil Nadu also in this consultation. The objective of the consultation is to bring the, have the discussion and prioritize some of the regional agenda and also challenges, and how we can really strengthen our overall policy, environment on rare disease in India. This is the fifth event in the series. Exactly years ago, in Feb last year, we started with a roundtable discussion on the draft policy on rare disease in India, and a consultative workshop was organized, and we gave, kind of collectively with FICCI and other partners some recommendation for the policy. Hopefully, we'll have the policy soon. And I would like to also highlight that today we have good expert group, combination of very highly eminent speakers from government, academia, industry, PSU, non-government partners, and also patient advocates. I would like to express my sincere appreciation to our speakers. I am looking forward to your active participation in this consultation today. It seems that now we are very close to the national policy, kind of very soon. And I would like to see 5 areas of collaboration with all of you in future also. One is prevention, awareness building, and capacity building, research, and create access to treatment. These are the 5 areas for People-to-People Health Foundation to focus, and we would like to collaboratively work with all of you on these issues. I welcome you again, and probably there is a good, kind of video. I would, kind of ask the team to run that video. And thank you again, and welcome to today's discussion. Thank you.
सपना यही हुआ करता था 16 साल की उम्र में कि मैं जल्दी से ठीक हो जाऊं। इसलिए सपने नहीं देखते, उम्मीद ज़्यादा है, और उम्मीद आज भी यही है कि बहुत जल्दी बहुत अच्छे दिन आएंगे, बहुत जल्दी जीने वाले दिन आएंगे। मैं 1 साल का था, मेरी जो एक्टिविटीज़ थी वो थोड़ी वीक होने लगी थी। 8-9 साल की उम्र में जाके पता चलेगी SMA टाइप 2 है। इन फ्यूचर क्या रिजल्ट है ये तो तभी पता चला जब हमने इसको फ्यूचर में ही एक्सपीरियंस करते गए।
Rare diseases, as the word suggests, are rare but great in number. There is not enough scientific data and awareness available on the causes and cure of these diseases. The prevalence of these diseases is among a small patient pool, making it harder to gather relevant scientific data or research for the same.
Diagnosis was quite difficult and it took a few years. Because of the rarity of the condition, my doctors had never seen a case like me before. I was subjected to various painful tests. I was finally diagnosed at the age of 5 years.
India is a country of approximately 1.33 billion diverse population with diverse problems. Thousands of people get sick every day and most of them get the right treatment. However, everyone is not lucky enough to make it through. There are some diseases for which there is a lot of desperation to seek and follow treatment. But the irony is, there is lack of treatment, lack of screening protocols for timely diagnosis, lack of access, and more importantly, very high cost. These are rare diseases.
जब मैं छोटा था, करीब 4 साल का, शुरू में पेट बड़ा हुआ तो आसपास के लोकल डॉक्टर्स को दिखाया तो उन्होंने कहा वो कुछ बताते रहे। फिर हम अपने स्टेट में दून हॉस्पिटल वहाँ गए तो वहाँ भी उनकी डॉक्टर की समझ में कुछ नहीं आया। तो फिर हम धीरे धीरे ऐसे बताते बताते दिल्ली पहुँचे तो वहाँ से बिल्कुल परफेक्ट डायग्नोज हो पाई ये बीमारी।
A rare disease is any disease that affects a small percentage of the population. WHO says rare diseases are lifelong disease or disorder which can cause declining effects on the life's quality. As the matter of fact, India, like many other developing countries, still has no standard definition and data on prevalence of rare diseases. But in most cases, the patient's life can be saved if the disease is diagnosed and treated at an early stage.
ये डिजीज़ इस तरीके से है कि अगर हम इसमें अवेयर रहें, हर एक फैमिली अवेयर रहे, तो आप इन चीज़ों से रोक सकते हैं।
I was fortunate to get this treatment free of cost through the company's charitable access program, making me the first known case of Gaucher disease in India to get treatment back in 1999. So since then, a couple of global pharma companies are providing this treatment free of cost to a few hundred patients in India on humanitarian grounds. But as these companies are constrained by the number of patients they can support, many patients in India are left untreated.
Rare diseases include genetic diseases, rare cancers, infectious tropical diseases, and degenerative diseases. 80% of rare diseases are genetic in origin and hence disproportionately impact children.
I was diagnosed when I was 1 year old, as told by my parents. So they believed that maybe it was something, normal thing which has happened. So they took me. It was a really long process because it happened like 23 years ago. I was diagnosed. The medical science was like not good, and especially when you're talking about the science in India.
Reported cases of rare diseases in India include Gaucher disease, Hurler syndrome, Hunter syndrome, Pompe disease, Fabry disease, spinal muscular atrophy, MPS 4A, MPS 6, sickle cell anemia, and many more. As the number of persons suffering from rare diseases is small, currently very few pharmaceutical companies are manufacturing drugs for rare diseases globally. There are no domestic manufacturers in India. The impact on families is often catastrophic, both emotionally and financially, as the cost of treatment is remarkably high. However, India is working hard on addressing the issue of rare diseases. Thousands of medical experts, researchers, and government officials are trying to develop mechanisms as well as medicines to cure persons suffering from these diseases.
Rare disease patients may be few in number, but their life is as important as anyone else. Although the figure of approximately 7,000 rare diseases may look intimidating, but the actual number of rare diseases that are treatable is very few.
The Government of India released a draft policy in the public domain to strengthen it further. The government is working on strengthening the policy further, and this gives hope to the nation. Hence, the Blueprint for Rare Diseases initiative aspires to bring together rare diseases community to prioritize rare diseases policy and program.
इलाज तो अभी मुझे प्रोवाइड नहीं हुआ पाए, वो इलाज जो है ना है वर्ल्ड के अंदर, लेकिन भारत में कुछ बच्चों को मिल भी रहा है, लेकिन वो बहुत कॉस्टली है. वो कुछ पॉलिसीज़ के थ्रू उन्हें बच्चों को मिल रहा है, तो मैं चाहता हूँ कि मुझे भी मिल जाए कोई पॉलिसी ऐसी.
If patients like Aditya can be blessed with a new life, we sincerely hope it will be possible to save Vishal, Tanvi, Sameer, and many other children and individuals living with rare diseases. Their dreams to play, to study, and to have a better quality of life. Sameer has still not lost hope.
Timely diagnosis and treatment play a crucial role in transforming the lives of patients. So most patients suffering from treatable rare diseases can live a completely normal and productive life if they are diagnosed and treated on time.
These were few rare people out of many who are hoping for adding more light to their years and a brighter future. Can we together be a part of the solution they are looking at?
Thank you so much for that wonderful video. We usually say a picture is 1,000 words, but a video goes even beyond. It's so impactful. And it also urges all of us to keep our approaches so much patient-centered. I thank Dr. Palo for his welcome note. We have some very eminent keynote speakers. I would request Dr. Arundhati Chandrasekhar, IAS, Mission Director, NHM, Department of Health and Family, Government of Karnataka, for her keynote address.
Good morning, everyone. The Health and Family Welfare Department, Government of Karnataka, is very happy to host this South India Regional Consultation on Rare Diseases, jointly hosted along with PHFI. And I'm thankful to all the speakers who have assembled here today for their sparing their valuable time and making an effort. And this will help us in strengthening our discussions and our final policy recommendations. So one is with respect to Karnataka, I'm happy to share the contributions we have made in helping communities and societies with where patients are there with rare diseases. With respect to Karnataka, I can tell you that about 22 patients have been treated from 2016 with lysosomal storage disorders. This has been done at a cost of about 18 crores annually from the state budget. Then we are also treating patients through other sources and towards the primary immunodeficiency diseases. As of now, a total of 30 patients at a cost of 1 crore have been treated. The purpose of today's webinar, as you all know, is to basically harness the creativity and energy of people who are willing to come together for the cause of these rare diseases, because this is often a neglected area. And so at least today we are meeting the first step towards harnessing and coming up with some kind of a combined recommendations and suggestions on the way forward. There is actually a great need, as we are aware, that for prioritization of preventive strategies at all levels, like genetic counseling, prenatal screening, diagnosis, newborn screening. We have started in a small way, but we would like to take it forward. And states should also sharply focus on creating robust programs for local prevalence data, pyramidal model of service delivery, technical and operational research also, expansion and scale up in a phased manner, and capacity strengthening of healthcare professionals and awareness amongst community members. All these are very important aspects. We are hoping that all this will get covered in today's webinar, and we are looking forward to the discussions for the day. All the best for the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, madam, for that encouraging note. I would now request Dr. J. Radhakrishnan, IAS, Principal Secretary to Government Health Family Welfare Department, Government of Tamil Nadu, for his welcome note and keynote address.
Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes.
First of all, I would. I'm very happy that apart from our routine review meetings on such an important topical subject, we have kept this particular regional consultation on blueprint of rare diseases in India. Here, I would not like to add much to what others are going to say, but I would like to say that we are faced with a very important High Court case. And when you deal with these people with rare diseases, unfortunately, the amounts which the individual treatment requires is quite high. But we cannot be very, very mechanical about it and say that since the cost is very high, we should abandon providing treatment for such people. Tamil Nadu's biggest challenge is we have actually gone ahead with a statement saying that we provide free treatment in all the places. And here we come into a contradiction that when diseases like whether Wilson's disease, Noonan disease, or some other rare disease comes, we leave these parents at a very difficult kind of position. So that is why this particular meeting is of a very important thing. I will personally request only one thing, is that we have committed to the High Court that state will make contribution. I faintly remember, because in my earlier tenure also Government of India had started working on this policy, and Karnataka in fact had taken the lead in a lot of issues, and we got a lot of material from Karnataka also on this activity. and we had submitted to the our High Court also that we can work with the association of people, parents who have these rare diseases. So my request would be that we need to push that when you talk of National Health Mission and various other activities at the state level, the challenges are that we have to routinely budget for our medical education and public health and all, and a lot of funds gets blocked into equally important maternal child health. But when it comes to disease control, we get driven by either the national level schemes and all. So rare disease, the policy which was actually announced and they were working on it, they need to go forward. Second is they need to simplify the sanction of funds for the medicines for these rare diseases based on some, let the committee be of a very high level which can even determine, like triaging cases are the cases which could be actually funded with a proper support. This is with regard to our genetic rare diseases. With regard to other rare and emerging diseases, our challenge is that COVID itself has been a very big lesson for us, that we need to upgrade our lab facilities, biosecurity lab facilities and all, and we should be prepared. We have excellent coordination. In fact, the first case of Zika itself was diagnosed in a PHC in Tamil Nadu, but the diagnosis was done, if I remember correctly, because we had a very good MOU with Karnataka with Manipal. But today also for my genomic analysis, I depend on Instem and all in Bangalore. So the next policy which we have been pushing in the states is that for all laboratory kind of facilities, at the state level, we should have Apex labs which should be fully functional, like NIV Pune, or for that matter NCDC kind of facilities, and for animals just like the lab facilities which we have in Bhopal. Plus, of course, depending on the kind of diseases, we need to have national reference lab for very, very rare kind of diseases. This would be my opening remark. I would be eagerly hearing our remarks from the other people. I am very sure that the more than the present session of administrators like us, the sessions that follow after 10:50 a.m., which really covers a number of issues, we can learn from it. The state perspective of Tamil Nadu will be presented by Dr. Anuradha, but I have I'm always of the opinion that in all these things we should not look at it in a competitive manner. We should look at things in a complementary manner. If some state is doing better as far as dealing with this, we should share knowledge. Kayasnur forest disease is a kind of example which I feel where whenever there is a crisis, our border district people are given free vaccines by Karnataka state. So that shows the kind of approaches which we can do. Similarly, we have a very long border with Kerala and also with Andhra. We all can work together even on this rare, which is a area which is somehow neglected, and people tend to override this because the numbers are very low and it is left to the common parlance fate of the people. If somebody comes, we start saying that what can we do? Ultimately, for one individual, so many crores we cannot spend, or so many lakhs we cannot spend. We could probably even look at a very vibrant policy out of insurance, like we do insurance support from CM and Ayushman Bharat. We collect the recoveries and recirculate it to high-end surgeries. This enzyme supplementation and other activities we could use. These would be my remarks in my keynote address. But once again, I thank this particular regional consultation, and I personally actually wanted to come and join this because I am part of a earlier High Court case also where it has been long deliberated, and but unfortunately, apart from making a token provision of 5 crores, we have not moved beyond accessing the national level funding for this, and more importantly, accessing the national level knowledge base for this. Even the CSR people, we could probably ask them to contribute for such facilities. One on infrastructure centering, second on even on the treatment in case of people suffering from such rare diseases. Thank you one and all for this wonderful thing, starting from Dr. M. Naina Rani onwards to all the speakers from the state also, Dr. Lakshmikant Palo and all other colleagues who are going to give their valuable addresses. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was such a passionate note from your side. The state's commitments reflect in your note. You also talked about the need to engage with the national knowledge base and the need to collaborate beyond state borders with complementarity. Fund mobilization, resource accessibility, need to have apex labs at the state levels. These are very important aspects to work in order to strengthen our interventions for rare diseases. Thank you so much. I'd now request Dr. Ratan Kelkar, MD NHM Kerala, for his keynote address.
Good morning, everyone. At the outset, let me congratulate the state of Karnataka and PPHF in organizing a virtual consultation on a very important topic of rare diseases. As pointed out in the video, it is a fact that there is little known about the rare diseases when it comes to management of rare disease and inclusion of management in the public health domain. There are lack of policies. The public health perspective for the management of rare diseases is still missing. There is a lack of R&D. So all of this has led to a situation where the cost of management has become very high. But meetings like this will definitely lead us to a mechanism of having a management protocol, the putting in the right perspectives and putting in the right policies in place, which will probably lead to a scenario where we'll be able to manage the rare diseases in a better way than what we're doing at this point of time. Having said that, there is still a lot of work happening in various states. For a fact, I know there's a lot of work has happened in Karnataka regarding the blood disorders. The management of hemophilia, thalassemia, and sickle cell anemia has now been made free of cost to the people in Karnataka. Taking a cue from there, the state of Kerala has also made available management of blood disorders free of cost with the Center of Excellence at 3 places, and ensuring that the people will not suffer out of the rare diseases, especially when I'm talking about the blood disorders. But still, when we look at the autoimmune diseases, the LSDs, a lot of work is yet to be done. So there's a lot of activity which is yet to happen, and consultative meetings like this probably will show the light and also the path on the way forward. The most important basic aspect of public health, which is a preventive aspect, I think that is very important for a rare disease. If there is any possibility of any kind of a prevention of a rare disease, there's nothing like it. Then coming to the second step of a curative process, we need to ensure that it is the people who are suffering from rare disease are assisted in a way so that their quality of life improves. So that is still a distant dream. And of course, when you come to the rehabilitative part of managing a rare disease, that is still a long way to go for all of us. But having said all of that, we have all been working towards ensuring that there is a good policy. Government of India has also come out with a policy wherein they've created a corpus fund for meeting the expenditure of the people who are suffering from rare diseases, and individual states are also supposed to be contributing something for that particular purpose. But that is not going to help in the long run, because we have to focus more on preventive aspects. R&D is the most important thing, research and development on finding the right molecules, or probably some kind of a genomic involvement studies, etc., which will probably look at modifying the genes of these people who are probably suffering from rare disease. I mean, we should look at that kind of a far-sighted approach is what we need to have in our policies. I hope that this consultative meeting would also be a step in the right direction. Having said that, what we have done in Kerala is also something on similar lines, because we realized that just by having a curative approach, we'll not be able to really do the dent in the public health perspective for rare disease. So what we have announced and also taken steps to establish is a comprehensive hemoglobinopathy research center for blood disorders. And we are having a genome R&D lab there, which will also look at all the blood disorders plus all the rare diseases as well, based on the cases which are going to come. So that is one step in the right direction. Probably the collaborative approach that is intended as part of this consultation will throw open more questions, and we will do course correction in the way forward. And intersectoral coordination is a very, very important aspect. The industry, the government, all need to work together to find a solution for this rare disease as well as the management of it. So that is very important. And the consultative meeting which is being arranged today will surely dwell upon all of these issues, and I'm looking forward for the outcome of these deliberations so that we can, in the way, we'll move in the right direction, the way forward, and also we'll have a very futuristic plan and action plan and a policy for the management of rare diseases. Best wishes to everybody.
Thank you, sir, for your kind, encouraging words for this consultative meeting. As you pointed out, we just not need to restrict ourselves to resource mobilization for providing treatment to these patients, but also to need to work on prevention. And there exactly we need more research and development work going on. It was very exciting to learn about the efforts that the state is putting up for blood disorders, and also to learn about the intent to collaborate with utmost agility for mid-course corrections. So thank you so much for your welcome note, sir. I'd now request Mr. Javed Akhtar, IAS, Additional Chief Secretary, Department of Health and Family Welfare, Government of Karnataka, for his keynote address. Over to you, sir. Sir, can you please unmute yourself?
Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Dr. Radhakrishna, Dr. Ratan Kelkar, Dr. Lakshmi Kant Palo, Dr. Mahapatra, Dr. Megha, Dr. Naina Rani, and all other participants afterwards, and all other participants who are attending this program this morning. A very good morning to all of you. It seems, though Dr. Radhakrishna said that he will leave it to the experts who will be joining this session, I find all the participants to be doctors other than me. I am happy to be a part of today's South India regional consultation organized jointly by PPHF and Government of Karnataka. State of Karnataka is committed to continue supporting the prevention and management of rare diseases. Rare diseases are of low prevalence and individually rare. However, collectively, they affect a considerable proportion of the population in any country, which according to generally accepted international research is between 6 to 8%. Many rare disease patients face years of a difficult diagnostic odyssey before receiving their correct diagnosis. Obtaining an early and accurate diagnosis is critical for allowing patients to seek effective treatment early and preventing morbidity and mortality. The pandemic has had a significant impact on nearly all aspects of our lives, particularly for the disease like rare disease. Looking forward to a list of priority actions for effective and resilient approaches for prevention and better management of rare diseases, even during these hard times of COVID. Having said so, I would like to say a few things about what is happening in Karnataka, though I understand Dr. Arundhati Chandrasekhar will be coming out with details. As Dr. Radhakrishna has said, we are facing a very long drawn public interest litigation which is going on in the High Court of Karnataka. And based on the court orders, we are treating a good number of children who are suffering from some of the rare diseases. The expenditure might be somewhere around rupees 20 crore, subject to correction on an yearly basis. And having realized that if you take into account the number of children who are suffering from these diseases is big, and the state cannot afford that type of finances to treat them, we have requested the government of India, before the draft policy was announced, we are one state which has been pressing with the government of India to come out some sort of central sector scheme or centrally sponsored scheme in which the expenses could be shared, because it is all known to everyone that the cost of treatment is very high. In most of the cases, it depends on the body weight of the child. Thereafter, this policy paper was issued by the government of India. After that, I don't know what happened. Then COVID came. As Ratan Kelkar was telling just now, they have kept a corpus. I am not aware about this. I will have to check. But I will strongly advocate that there is a necessity of intervention by the government of India in terms of coming out with a scheme for two reasons. One is that the state finances do not allow tackling that as many children as are there suffering from this disease. That is number one, and there is a necessity that the government of India comes in. Even the developed states are not in a position to handle this. Their position will be much worse in the less developed states of the country. Second thing is that if government of India comes into picture, there will be a possibility of giving a look to the cost of treatment. I mean, the cost of the drugs which are used. The diseases being rare, the treatments are also rare, and only a few companies manufacture the drugs. The cost is very high. I don't know what is the reason that the cost is very high, whether it is only intellectual property or the cost of manufacturing itself is very high. So these things could be gone into by the government of India, maybe NPPA, and they need to perhaps give a thought how to cross-check and find the cost of manufacture of the drug and regulate the price. In Karnataka, what we are doing, we are negotiating with the manufacturers, and the type of arrangement which is functioning is as follows. Every year we negotiate about the quantity required. Then the company agrees that this is the price, and 25% of the doses they will give free. So this type of arrangement is happening. But if the economy of a scale comes in, and if there is an entity which can go into the cost of the constituents which go into the manufacture of the drug, and if it is taken up for the country as a whole, I'm sure it will be helpful. So these are some of the things that I would like to highlight at this point of time. And now it is a matter of time that courts may give stricter directions, because quite a few NGOs have filed cases in different courts. So based on one case, we are doing something. I don't know whether if more people go and the courts direct to treat more people, there will be enormous financial implication on the states. This is something which has to be kept in mind. Having said so, I will thank Dr. Lakshmikant Palo and Dr. Mahapatra of Grid Council and our Dr. Arundhati Chandrasekhar and Dr. Naina Rani for having assembled this web program. Thanks to all of you, and thanks for giving me a patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was so thought-provoking. Your take on the economy of scale, especially going pan-India, a pan-India mobilization effort, looks like a very practical idea. Of course, the COVID-19 pandemic has thrown in a challenge, and we do not really know how we should be going forward from here. But then the consultations would help us get shared wisdom, collective wisdom on this. Thank you so much, sir. I would now request Dr. K.V. Trilok Chandra, IAS, Commissioner, Health and Family Welfare, for his keynote address. To you, sir, please.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Javed sir and all the other respected dignitaries who are present today. Thanks for having me for the South Region consultation on rare diseases. As we all know, most rare diseases are genetic and are present throughout a person's entire life. So if those symptoms do not appear immediately, So the major challenge is with respect to the prevention rather than the cure. In our country, particularly, what we have seen, the lack of genetic counseling, which is widely available, which is actually the most common cause for such kind of ailments coming into the picture. So I would strongly recommend that the genetic counseling be available at the PHC level starting, so that people are aware as to the cause of such diseases and they can make informed decisions. And also the cost of the innovative diagnostic methods which are there, that is also quite prohibitive. Even for example, if somebody wants to go for a non-invasive pregnancy test to detect such kind of genetic abnormalities, the prohibitive cost which is there easily puts such diagnostic methods out of the reach of human people. So I think one, apart from genetic counseling, second one is the easy availability and the cost of the non-invasive pregnancy tests, I think would be a way forward. Apart from that, the disease burden which is already prevalent, as Javed sir said, and also Dr. Radhakrishna already elaborated, the cost of these drugs, how do we share them, and also the collaboration required from the pharmaceutical companies to make it a more humane approach to handle the cost of such uh, delivery mechanisms and the treatments available. I think everybody should partner and ensure that the incentives to leverage existing knowledge and optimize the use of existing drugs, both the innovative delivery systems as well as drug repurposing, and find methods to provide easy access to available healthcare for the patients. I'm sure, as Javed sir has already elaborated, Karnataka would be happy to promote and explore collaborations and partnerships for prevention and better management of the rare diseases. I would again thank all of you for having me over for the South Region consultation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I didn't want to interrupt you in between. We didn't get your video, but the message was loud and clear. Thank you so much for again highlighting the need to collaborate across different stakeholder constituencies, and also to identify innovative delivery systems and repurposing of drugs so that we can make treatment available to these patients with rare diseases. I thank all the guests of honor for their keynote address. We had a keynote address from our chief guest, Dr. K. Sudhakar, Honorable Health Minister, State of Karnataka, but there has been an unavoidable last-minute change to it. So apologies, we don't have him today. But thank you so much, all our esteemed guests of honor. The keynote addresses went very much in a direction that puts the entire discussions we'll have in the later part of the day. And it sets the tone. Thank you so much. We'd now take a short break, and I'd request all the audience to kindly note that we are having a global consultation on the International Rare Diseases Day, that is on 28th of February 2021. So on the bottom of your screen, you'll find an icon that would take you to the lobby. So if you click on that, go to the lobby, you'll find the register now button. So I request all of you to kindly register for that consultation. You can also visit the exhibit area where we have stalls through different partners, and we invite you to visit that. We also have a photo booth where you can have a pic of yourself attending this event. So please have a look at that. Please explore the entire virtual conference systems. It's a break of about 5 minutes, and we shall convene at around 10:50, that is 3 to 5 minutes from now, for our session on key unmet needs in the management of rare diseases and priority actions and best practices. See you. So in this session that we're going to have, we'd request you to also, if you have any questions, put in the chat box. We'll try and take a note of that. We'll be able to take 2-3 questions within the session. And we have, so this questions will be taken up at the end of the session. But for Dr. Vandana Sashi, she's joining us from the US, and it's very late over there. By the time she finishes her talk, it will be around 1 o'clock in the night. So we'll try to take any questions you would have for her immediately after the talk. So you can put in your questions on the chat box. And once we have the session done, we'll take questions for all the speakers. But for Dr. Vandana, your questions would be taken right after her talk.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Good morning, Dr. Sanjeeva. Good morning, Dr. Vandana. Hello,
good morning,
Dr.
madam.
Mahapat. Hi, Meenakshi.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So thank you for joining in. We are in a break, so we'll start the session another 1 or 2 minutes. I'd welcome you all. So we'll be taking some questions at the end of it. And for Dr. Vandana, any questions that the audience would have, we'll take immediately after your talk. Okay, so thank you so much for joining in. It's very late in the US, I understand.
Oh, it's fine. It's not a problem. I just have an early start tomorrow. That's the reason I don't want to stay beyond. Hi, Meenakshi.
Hello, how are you, Dr. Vandana? And Dr. Madhulika, I was muted, so sorry. This thing.
That's okay.
Hi, Meenakshi.
Good to see you.
We need you over here, Dr. Vandana.
Yeah.
Come back here. We need you back.
Someday, yeah.
Yes. Hi, Gautam.
Hi, good morning, ma'am. Good morning to all.
Anjay.
Right, so it's 10:50. Shall we start?
Yes.
Okay, I'd request the organizers to please move the curtain. Yes, good. I welcome all the esteemed speakers for this session. Now, for rare diseases, of course, there is a huge unmet need on different dimensions. So in this session, we shall discuss the key unmet needs when it comes to management of rare diseases, and what should be our priority actions, and of course, if there are definitely some best practices, and let us understand about them. So going on first, I'd request Dr. Madhulika Kabra. Madam is a professor in the Division of Genetics, Department of Pediatrics, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, for her talk, which would give us an orientation to the national scenario and different perspectives around it. Over to you, madam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahapatra. Shall I share my screen now?
Yes, madam, you can share.
So is it visible? Is the screen visible, Dr. Mahapatra?
Not yet, ma'am. Not yet.
Not yet? Just a minute. Is it visible now?
No.
No? Share. Can you see it now?
No, ma'am.
Am I doing something wrong?
Yes. Now we're getting a screen.
Now you can see it? Okay, right. I'll just put it full screen. So good morning, everybody, and thank you very much. I would like to thank PPHF for involving me in this very important consultation and all the prior consultations, also regional consultations, which they have organized. So the task which has been given to me is to just briefly discuss about the rare disease scenario in India in various aspects, and I'll try to cover it very, very briefly. So we all know that rare diseases are a global challenge. About 7,000 rare diseases being known, and 80% of them being due to a genetic cause, and only 5% have some kind of treatment available. And we would all agree that it's a global challenge, and no single country, no continent can solve the problem. So, and the patient needs are similar in all countries. So we all need to join hands within the country and even outside the country to take the challenge and give the best possible management to our patients. Now, so for today's discussion, what I've tried to do is I have put in some situation analysis points in Indian perspective, and I would like to just discuss in brief what is the status and what can be done in these areas. So I would be touching upon the epidemiology, the education and training opportunities, the diagnostic and counseling facilities, the treatment facilities, public awareness, prevention program, and the status of research. I would not be touching upon the rare disease policy, which is under review as of now. So first, coming to the first point of the availability of epidemiological data and the definition of rare diseases. So you all know that even world over, there is no universal rare disease definition, and various countries would use their different definitions depending on their status of rare diseases and the data available. And in India, we do not have any standard definition as of now because we do not have prevalence data available. But if we extrapolate the frequency of about 6 to 8%, which is globally, we have a very, very high load of rare diseases in our country. We do have some community-based data available for hemoglobinopathies, and there is data emerging also from the newborn screening programs for some of the endocrine disorders and also for inborn errors of metabolism. But largely for rare diseases, we have lack of data, and this really needs to be addressed by doing some community-based studies. So in 2017, when the rare diseases, actually the scenario was picking up, this initiative was organized by AIMS, ICMR, and the JNU, where we brought in all the stakeholders at one platform, not only academia, but also from the government, the government representatives, and also the companies which are manufacturing these drugs. And apart from other discussions which were very fruitful, a very important event that took place in this particular meeting was the announcement of rare disease registry to have some epidemiological data, which is funded by ICMR. So this is called a National Registry for Rare and Other Inherited Disorders, and this is actually for selected group of rare diseases focusing on disorders for which some kind of treatment is available. The data coordination center is the ICMR, and all the participating centers are submitting this data to the ICMR. And there are some core groups which have been formed, expert groups which have worked on the performers for which with which the data will be collected. So it has just started, and because of the COVID issues, there was a delay, but then now it has picked up, and the data is being uploaded online. So these are the 6 group of disorders which have been included in the rare disease registry, and as I said, most of them have some kind of therapy available. So we have group 1, which has storage disorders, small molecule inborn errors of metabolism, which usually require specific diets. Here you have enzyme replacement therapy and things like that, and even bone marrow transplantation. You have hematological disorders, skeletal dysplasias, primary immune deficiencies, was being referred to in another presentation in the morning, and neuromuscular disorders, for which now treatment is for some of which now treatment is available. But this data would give us hospital-based information and would not generate the prevalence data. But still, we will have information on the families which are seeking care at the healthcare facilities. So coming on to the educational status in India, it has improved over years very, very significantly. And we have official courses like DM courses, very well structured, and which are there all over the country. And many such courses are running, and people are actually interested in joining these courses. Apart from these DM courses, which are rather long, say 3 years and more commitment, there are shorter fellowships also available now, funded by various agencies like Department of Biotechnology. Under the Ummeed initiative, there is funding of fellowship. There are courses at various institutions. There are fetal medicine fellowships, genetic counseling courses, and a lot of CMEs and lectures and courses are happening. And I am really happy to say that there is an evident improvement in the knowledge and awareness and interest amongst the healthcare workers and the public at large for in the area of rare diseases. When we come to genetic services, Indian scenario again, so over the last 10 years, I must say each one of us has evidenced a sea change. Important to note that almost all investigations are available within India, which was not there, say, about 5 to 10 years back. And this involves all kinds of services like molecular, cytogenetics, biochemical, etc. Prenatal diagnostic and screening facilities are also available, but they really need strengthening. Both public and private sectors are there, but then cost is a major issue. It is more in the private sector, the availability. Though there are programs like from CSIR, which are free, and many government institutions are providing these services at a very low or even free of cost. It is important to emphasize on early diagnosis, which would only happen if the awareness is good, and then only we will be able to manage these patients better. It is important to emphasize on centers with comprehensive facilities and under one roof so that the patients can be taken care, and issues of quality assurance and other regulations also need to be taken care. Coming to the treatment status, we know that specific and supportive, primarily supportive treatment is there for rare diseases. Cost is a major issue, as has been emphasized since morning. Most drugs are not manufactured in India. There are CSR and humanitarian initiatives, particularly for enzyme replacement therapy and some of the therapies for spinal muscular atrophy, which are being provided. There is one-time treatment under Rashtriya Arogya Nidhi, but that is about 15 to 20 lakhs. One-time treatment reimbursement is happening for the parents who are government employees. Guidelines of treatment are in place because it is very important to have very clear guidelines in case we finally decide to treat these patients, who are the patients who would really benefit with these, and work has been done in this area also, and I'll briefly telling you about that. There has been relaxation in the DCGI rules for drug trials, particularly for rare disease drugs, but importantly, as supportive care is the major care available, it needs strengthening at all levels. So treatment guidelines I was referring to began with initial recommendations by Dr. V.K. Paul's committee, and later on there was a consultation meeting in July 18, and then there were some guidelines made for inclusion, exclusion and exit criteria for rare diseases, and it has been tried to make them very objective, transparent, so that the right patients who are going to benefit with therapy get these treatments. Coming to the prevention, which in my understanding is the most important thing in the area of rare diseases at all levels, which means primary, secondary and tertiary level prevention, which needs strengthening at all levels. Primarily, we focus on prenatal screening and prenatal diagnosis and newborn screening, and this really needs strengthening, though it is there in the country. So if we talk of newborn screening, which is a very important entity for secondary prevention, there are many pilot studies which have gone in and generated epidemiological data and feasibility for this disease for newborn screening in India. And there are many state government programs also going on, and there are birth defect surveillance programs also on. So this is the Ummeed initiative by DBT for the aspirational district program, where there is an effort to train the district level health workers to identify high risk mothers for genetic disorders. This was being discussed again in the morning, and newborn screening for 5 defects is also going on. Our aspirational district is Haridwar, and there are many aspirational districts throughout the country which are benefiting with this program. So based on all this, the RBSK, the Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Karyakram, is planning to come up with a comprehensive newborn screening, which would not only include the functional screening based on the heel prick, but also the birth defect screening, hearing screening and congenital heart disease screening all under one roof, and a holistic newborn screening in one go. And the screening for high risk babies by TMS and other methods would be restricted to the high risk babies. Apart from awareness amongst the doctors, you can say that there are many support groups in the country for rare diseases which celebrate and try to propagate awareness and try to also communicate with the government officials to help these families, and this has really gone in a long way. And this is just a slide to show you the multiple organizations which are there in the country, the parent organizations which are really working hard for the welfare of these patients and families. So finally, what has happened in the research in India? So I must say there has been recently generous funding for research in rare diseases. I talked about the rare disease registry. There have been multiple collaborative projects on newborn screening, lysosomal storage disorders. There are various task forces which are focusing on specific therapies and rare diseases, in genome initiatives, and so on and so forth. Clinical trials, revised guidelines are really helpful. There's a bridging of gap with all these proposals and projects going on between the clinicians and scientists, which is a crux to work and research in this area. International collaborations are on, multiple publications from India, even identification of new genes. But to my mind, I think we also need to focus more on drug development locally, because then only we will be able to bring down the cost, which is a prohibitive area in the management of rare diseases. So this is based on what all I have said. I think this could be the work, this could be a plan which can be start from the community level to the primary healthcare level, district level hospitals, state medical colleges, and tertiary referral centers and regional centers. And all these need to have a very good networking system, basically for screening, identifying high-risk cases. State medical colleges should have good facilities, at least for commoner genetic disorders, and tertiary referral centers and regional centers. And we need to have liaison with the basic science institutions to have a very, very good research. And also, needless to say, that it has to go hand in hand with patient care, awareness, and education. So to conclude, we are in the beginning of a new era of rare diseases, very exciting, slow but steady progress, significant progress in diagnostics and research. Drug development needs strengthening. The best possible modalities for therapy should be worked on, and best patients who would really benefit for therapy should be selected. Sensitization and awareness needs to be increased. Financial issues really need to be discussed, but it is very important to have sustainability for any of these efforts, because for most of these disorders, treatment is lifelong, management is lifelong. So we have to be very careful about this. So there's a long way to go, but I'm sure we can do it. And in the end, I would like to dedicate this presentation to two stalwarts in the area of genetic disorders in our country, Professor I.C. Verma and Dr. S.S. Agarwal, both mentors for me. Dr. I.C. Verma really paved way for clinical and diagnostic facilities and research in genetic disorders, and Dr. S.S. Agarwal, which is a very, very futuristic vision, started the education aspect of for genetics, and started the first DM medical genetics course in SGPGI Lucknow. So with this hope that we are really going to work together to work in the area of rare diseases, I thank you all for the patient hearing, and these are my acknowledgements to my colleagues and other groups and funding agencies for making all these things possible in India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. Right at the start of itself, it looks like everything is so grim about rare diseases. We do not have data, we do not have systems in place. But then as we went through your presentation, we found that efforts are on. So there is a movement around it. So courses have started. Many people are taking it up very passionately. Of course, sustainability is an issue, and there are multiple aspects that need to be addressed. But then this presentation was very comprehensive and gives a vision. So thank you so much for this. I'd now request.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam. I'd now request Dr. Sanjeeva GN, Associate Professor, Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Death, Bangalore, for his talk on the Karnataka state scenario and perspectives. Karnataka is one of the states in India that is doing much for rare diseases. It has some great learnings to offer. So I'd request Sanjeeva sir for his talk.
Okay, thanks organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts in this program. Okay. So my screen is visible, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for this opportunity to share my thoughts in this program. Karnataka state is one state in our country where there are a lot of things happening, and the state has given support to this cause of rare diseases. So when we look back how all started, it started with the patient support group initiative. It started with a conversation between a patient support group and the government of Karnataka. And there were multiple courses down the line which led to the current scenario. Some of the groups has engaged the executive and got their support and got the funding, for example, primary immunodeficiency. And some of the patient support group went through the judicial system, and with the judicial intervention, they are getting the treatment, like your lysosomal storage disorder. And some of the patient support group with their own initiative are supporting patients like osteogenesis imperfecta. So it's a multiple approaches, and end of the day, everything is culminating into the patient care and well-being of the patient. So what was the response from the state in this for all these approaches? Karnataka was the first state to establish Center of Excellence for Rare Diseases at Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Health, which was announced in the budget of 2014, and now we are up and running Center of Excellence. And there has been ongoing financial support for the continued treatment. From last 4 years, more than 40 crores has been allocated for the management of these disorders. And there is a cabinet decision committing to share the appropriate financial burden with the center. Probably the Karnataka is the first state to take this decision at the cabinet level. And also, the government of Karnataka has allocated nearly 10 crores for the research under RGHS, specifically focusing on developing low-cost intervention for these rare diseases. And this is our Center of Excellence. It's a 7-bedded daycare unit. Apart from that, we have a space for genetic counseling. And now the next question is, what do we need in the future course? Basically, we need a constant support from the government to develop the local prevalence data so that you can prioritize. And we need, the most important is an affordable and effective treatment. And to deliver this, we need a good healthcare delivery model so that the patient will not travel, it will be delivered at the doorstep of the patient. So what is the progress so far? We have seen, we are nearly see around 4,000 to 5,000 family with rare diseases every year. They are provided with appropriate services. Madam has already discussed, not many of these diseases are amenable to treatment. And nearly 2,000 children with various rare diseases, including LSD, are provided treatment either free of cost or at a subsidized cost. And efforts are being made to develop low-cost, locally produced alternative. And one of the success story, I think Dr. Meenakshi Bhatt will elaborate on this. IEM diet, which is produced locally here, which is a low-cost alternative. And these are some of the examples of the successful therapy. This child was diagnosed with Gaucher disease, these two children, and with post 3.5 years of enzyme replacement therapy, you can see the improvement in their clinical features. Similarly, this child, when we saw her for the first time, and unfortunately the treatment was not available for her during that time, she underwent partial splenectomy, and post splenectomy she improved. And this was the child when she first started receiving her enzyme replacement therapy. And this is 6 months later. You can see the sea change in her clinical appearance as well as her total well-being. Now this child is 6-year-old and doing absolutely fine with respect to her development and growth. And she is going to school. So this is the effect of treatment on these patients. What are the challenges when developing a policy for a rare diseases? The most important challenge is heterogeneity of the nature of these diseases. Though the prevalence, Madam has described, there must be around 62 to 70 million people affected with rare diseases. It looks a big number, but the problem is when you split it out, individual diseases are very rare and the low number, and you need a different approaches for individual diseases. So no common approach will do good for all these diseases. So you need to have different policies for a different rare diseases. And another important challenge is lack of local data. So you don't know what to prioritize and what to focus on. So there is absolutely no data available, especially epidemiological data. And many a times, because of low awareness among various stakeholders, including medical community, the diagnosis is delayed. So once the irreversible damage has happened, so even if you treat, the treatment may not be so effective. So you'll miss that opportunity of that window of maybe a golden window of treatment for optimal outcome. And many diseases, they don't have an ideal therapeutic option. What do you mean by ideal therapeutic option? Therapeutic option which is very specific, should be optimal, and preferably one time. That's most of the time it is not available. And whatever the treatment available for many of these diseases, they are resource intense. You need a lot of money, you need a lot of skill, you need a lot of interventions. So it's a resource intense treatment. So this is another challenge. And another challenge from the patient side is the family commitment, because most of these treatments are lifelong. They need to be adherent to the treatment for lifelong. So initially they'll be apprehensive, they will have a lot of focus on that. So they will be coming, once the child stabilizes, the treatment fatigue sets in. So these commitment, there may be some loosening in the commitment. So reinforcement of this commitment is very important. So these are some of the challenges for developing or evolving a policy for rare diseases. Now, what is the way forward? Before I conclude, what is the way forward? How can we go with this rare disease, and how do you approach this? Probably we need a quasi-vertical approach. That means a central generic policy, and which can be prioritized based on the local prevalence, because the diseases which are common in this part of the country may not be the same in the other part of the country. So it has to be prioritized based on our local prevalence. And another important thing is early recognition. As I said, a golden window for the treatment, optimal treatment outcome. So maybe we need to now start thinking about universal newborn screening. We have been advocating this from quite a bit of time, but still it is not there on ground. So universal newborn screening should be rolled out, for especially for those which are treatable and amenable to treatment. And also important is creating awareness among various stakeholders, especially medical community, so that early recognition is possible in those which are not included in the universal newborn screening program. And the very important aspect is you should develop treatment and its delivery model based on the AFAS criteria. What is this AFAS criteria? Any treatment or a delivery model should be affordable, it should be feasible to the patient, it should be acceptable, it should be safe and sustainable. So currently, whatever is available is mostly it is not affordable, and feasibility is also an issue. Many patients don't accept this, and though it is safe, the sustainability is again a question mark. So we need to develop which should be affordable, feasible, acceptable, safe, and sustainable. And for this, we need to mobilize resources from various sources. So that is also important. We need to tap CSR funding. We need to tap other donor agencies. State alone will be difficult to mobilize such an intense resource. So we need to look for other source of funding these projects. I think I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts on this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That is a distillation of all the experiential learning that we have coming from your state. You talked about the challenges across the continuum of a patient's journey. So starting from prevalence data, making affordable treatment available, and then making it more accessible. So, and you also discussed about different models, the quasi-vertical models, the newborn screening programs, and of course, identifying delivery models which are affordable, feasible, acceptable, safe, and beyond that, sustainable. And also about mobilizing different resource channels so that we could do better in terms of providing for these patients. Thank you so much. Moving on to the next speaker, we have Dr. Gautam Arunachal Udupi, Assistant Professor, Department of Human Genetics, NIMHANS, Bangalore. And I would request sir for his speech on, for his talk on clinical research and rare disease area, need and barriers. This is in continuation to what Dr. Kelkar pointed out today morning, that R&D are very important. So, yeah, requesting sir for this.
Yeah, thank you. So much of the topic has been well summarized by previous two speakers. I'll just share my screen. Is it visible?
Sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah. So as a prelude, I'll just take you through a clinical research scenario which we did, which can help us, like providing insights into decision making, implementing cost-effective screening techniques, and to bring down the burden of the disease in the community. So we happen to see 2 cases of juvenile Canavan disease, which is a rare disease with a prevalence of 1 in 2 lakhs. But when we saw the complete pedigree, we found out that they are belonging to a particular community called the Telugu Devanga community. And there are about 4,000 individuals in this community spread across 3 villages, and they do not marry any outsiders, like away from the caste. So when we spoke to the elders, they said there are at least 24 reported such cases. And when we did the genetic testing, we found a founder mutation. We have done founder mutation analysis, and we estimated carrier rates of about 1 in 20 in the population. So we were able to provide cheap carrier screening, cost-effective carrier screening tests to the community. We could provide pre-marriage counseling, prenatal diagnosis, and awareness and education to the community, so that the burden of the disease in future generations comes down. So we all know about the definitions of rare diseases by different organizations. I will not go into the details. So even though they're individually rare, put together they form a huge burden on the healthcare system. Over 75 million Indians are estimated to be affected with one of the rare diseases. There are over 7,500 types of rare diseases that are known, and over 80% of them are suspected to be genetic in origin. So that means at least 1 in 19 Indians are affected by a rare disease. So it's not that rare after all. So in spite of so much knowledge, only 500 odd orphan drugs have been approved so far, and many more are in clinical trial. But RDs contribute significantly to mortality, morbidity, and healthcare costs, and social stigma in the family. So the critical challenge in RD management is the timeline from between the onset of disease and diagnosis, which is about 5 to 7 years. The main reason being lack of awareness and lack of diagnostic facilities. So gains from early diagnosis and management far outweigh the cost in terms of fiscal expenditure and human suffering without a diagnosis and treatment. So right to life is a fundamental right, and under the premise of which there is immense effort to promote adequate healthcare for RD, which has been neglected so far in India. So this mandates a strong rare disease policy, which needs to be implemented. So there are several areas of clinical research in rare diseases. To begin with, it is about awareness. One of the studies by Agrawal et al. Concluded that only 1 in 3 healthcare professionals have some rudimentary understanding of rare diseases, and 2/3 do not have any understanding of rare diseases among healthcare professionals, and non-health professionals who have above average education, that is beyond bachelor's degrees, had no knowledge of rare diseases, and many of them identified common neglected diseases as rare diseases. So the research should start by increasing the awareness of RD among healthcare professionals and community. The major barriers for decreased awareness is the lack of educational material regarding rare disease in medical and allied sciences, and coverage in media is extremely less. So mandatory coursework in routine medical and allied sciences curriculum should be is a need, and improve the quantum of coverage and its frequency in various media platforms. We all know what happened, how media can change awareness about a particular disease. A few months ago, nobody knew about RT-PCR, rapid antigen tests. So now all of the community knows about it. So that's what media can do to improve awareness. The next area is the epidemiological research, which is the backbone for any new initiative, as it provides gravity of the problem situation, enables policy decision making and its implementation. Newer research initiatives can be taken to better understand the nature and cause of the disease. And we have few preliminary data from small studies across India. Most of them are hospital-based. Very few are community-based. And we know that genetic epidemiological research is performed at three levels: the direct level, where house-to-house survey in search of cases, which is the looking at the phenotype; the endophenotype, that's the newborn screening method; and the genotype methods, which are both indirect but provide you a good prevalence figures. So, like many studies have been done in hemoglobinopathies like sickle cell disease, thalassemia, and hemophilia, but larger studies are required. The next component in epidemiology is the case registry, which ma'am already spoke to. So I will not go into the details. So a centralized rare disease registry with access to investigations from various fields like molecular biology, computational biology would facilitate innovations. So we need such an open access centralized registry, which can be accessed by all, and it has to be community-based rather than hospital-based. NIMANS has been the nodal center for neuromuscular diseases, which Mudali Kaman showed. So in the last 2.5 decades, we have seen over 300 cases of Duchenne muscular dystrophy, over 1,200 cases of spinal muscular atrophy, and 5,000 cases of limb-girdle muscular atrophy, and registration online in the ICM formats is going on. But I know what are the challenges we are facing, and there are many barriers to for improvement in epidemiological research, which are the lack of funding, lack of skilled manpower and training centers to conduct large-scale epidemiological studies, lack of a central registry, and screening tests like newborn screening tests, which can be easily implemented at the PSC level. So we need to take steps to improve on all these aspects. The next arena is the molecular research. So there are numerous basic science research projects which are happening across India in various institutes. However, bench to bedside translation is minimal but appreciable. Many new genes have been associated with the diseases. There has been good insights into many of the rare diseases, but still the pace is less. And as a researcher myself, in a primary institute, I find that the cost of research in rare diseases in India is very high, and it's mainly due to reliance on instruments that need to be imported. Mostly we import majority of the instruments, including like sequencers, liquid handlers. Diagnostic kits themselves are extremely costly and they have to be imported. Animal models are hardly available in India. They have to be imported. They are often used for knockout studies, drug development. So we have to find an alternative for it. So what we are doing in NIMANS is stem cell model, which is a cheaper alternative to animal model, which can also be used for deeper research into the pathogenetics of that disorder. Advanced bioinformatics software, statistical tools, again they have to be imported, which are quite costly. So we are developing our own in-house pipelines, which are 1/10 the cost of commercially available ones, and there is negligible public-private partnership. In spite of all this, there is a silver lining. So self-reliance during COVID pandemic by developing cost-effective vaccines, diagnostic kits, ventilators within India has shown a way that it is possible. eminent Indian educated scientists involved in various research, pioneering research and drug development, like Subbarao here, who had discovered methotrexate, who was educated in Madras Medical College. So these are some instances of silver lining. So the main barriers in molecular research arena is the high cost of instrumentation, the consumables, then the brain drain. Well-trained individuals are moving abroad because of lack of opportunities in India, absence of suitable animal model or stem cell model systems to study rare diseases, and lack of orphan drug and gene therapies designing and manufacturing within India. So what is required is the development and validation of highly cost-effective genetic screening tests. We are trying to develop in-house capture kits, which can be cost-effective compared to what we buy from bigger companies like Illumina, Agilent. So to promote R&D capacity building with a goal of self-reliance, cut costs and dependence on other countries, promote favorable opportunities for young professionals for RD research in India, and focus research on developing cost-effective rapid cellular models for early target discovery and development, and funding and financial incentives, tax reductions for startups for drug discovery and manufacturing and repurposing. So take-home message is that rare disease poses a significant burden to the patient, family, and healthcare system, and hence there is a need to implement a strong rare disease policy. First stepping stone to improve rare disease scenario in our country is to improve awareness, proper conduct of epidemiological research, and utilization of registries in RD can significantly influence the efficient channelizing of healthcare resource allocation and funding. Investing on major molecular research arenas, which I spoke to, would take us forward, even though we have initiated a small pace, it can be improvised. I thank the organizers for inviting me to share my thoughts. This is my institute, and this is our lab. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now it looks like a Pandora's box. We have a situation there, and we need more research to help resolve that situation. But research per se has many challenges to resolve. You very rightly pointed out that we do not have epidemiological data, and we do not have adequate capacity there to do good research. And then not just in terms of human capacity and research know-how, but in terms of funding as well. Since these require very basic research type of designs, it goes all the more complex over there in having models, animal models, and doing some new drugs, new molecules. So very, very thought-provoking talk, sir. Thank you so much. For the audience, if you have any questions for the speakers, please communicate them to us. We are taking a note of all the questions you have, and we shall be taking a couple of them towards the end of this session. Now, for the next speaker, Dr. Vandana Sashi. She is a professor of pediatrics, Department of Pediatrics, Division of Medical Genetics, Duke University, North Carolina, USA. And she'll be talking about successes and challenges of genomic sequencing in diagnosing rare and ultra-rare diseases. For any questions that you might be having for Dr. Vandana, please pose them so that we could take them directly after her talk. And for other panelists, while we end the session, we'll take those questions. So, Dr. Vandana, over to you, madam.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes.
Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to be talking about kind of a subset within rare diseases called ultra rare. this discussion also includes diagnostic of rare, but I kind of want to separate out the two, and you'll see why. It has pertinence both to diagnosis and downstream endeavors such as treatments. But as a group, if you look at rare and ultra-rare diseases, some of the previous speakers already alluded to some of the statistics. I'm going to very quickly go through that. There are about 7,000 of these, and we don't know how many of these are ultra-rare. There are probably in the thousands. And the vast majority are genetic, caused by mutations within single genes. So they are amenable to approaches such as genomic sequencing, which is going to be the focus of my talk. They are really of public health importance because of the collective prevalence. In the US, about 30 million Americans are believed to be affected by these rare and ultra-rare diseases, and worldwide it's about over 250 million. And it does pose a medical, psychosocial, and economic burden for the patients, and of course, there's a societal economic burden as well. Patients who have these diseases are hard to diagnose, so they undergo the so-called diagnostic odyssey. It can take about 5 to 30 years for diagnosis to be correctly given, and almost half get a wrong diagnosis during this process. And about half the individuals affected with these disorders are children, and they have a fairly high morbidity and mortality of almost a third very early in life. So let's parse these two out a little bit together separately. What are rare Mendelian disorders? So this group of disorders have been much better identified and studied than the ultra-rare. And so rare disorders are defined by a prevalence of about less than 67 per 100,000 population. The other definition is less than 200,000 affected. The common examples of these are things like Duchenne's, neuromuscular atrophy, Pompe. Somebody talked about hemoglobinopathies. Those all fall into rare Mendelian diseases. These can actually, for the most part, be diagnosed by targeted single testing if they are clinically recognized. Of course, if they're not clinically recognized, they get missed. But generally speaking, next generation genomic sequencing, NGS, is really not essential for the diagnosis of many of these disorders. For most of these, we already know the underlying genes, and we've known them probably for decades. And they have a lot of therapeutic options, even though a lot of them lack treatments. Compared to ultra-rare, there are more therapeutic options for this group. Because they have adequate sample sizes, you can do randomized control trials, and there's a lot of pharma interest in developing new treatments for these. If you contrast that with ultra-rare Mendelian disorders, these are defined as having a much lower prevalence, less than 20 in 100,000. In the US, it's believed there'll be less than 2,000 affected people with these disorders. So these are really difficult to diagnose with this traditional approach of targeted gene tests unlike the rare diseases. And the reason for that is a lot of these are just emerging. Many of them have been recognized probably in the last couple of years, 5 years, 10 years at best, or some of them have yet to be described. And because there are so few affected individuals, sometimes there are less than 100 affected individuals. And how do you recognize a phenotype in somebody who comes to see you when there are so few reports of it, for example? Or the manifestations could be very heterogeneous and not specific. And we know very little about the phenotypic spectrum and natural history, and that also contributes to the problem of diagnosis. However, NGS, or next generation sequencing, has really exponentially increased the diagnosis of these conditions. And as well, new disorders that are ultra rare are being discovered on a monthly basis now. So there's an exponential rise in that. The problem with these disorders is almost none have specific treatments. They have really small sample sizes. So you really, even if there was interest in developing a drug for these disorders, randomized control trials are extremely difficult. And there's very little interest in pharma, at least in the United States, for developing new therapies for these disorders because the market potential is really poor. On the other hand, if you look at PubMed and you look at the progress in finding new Mendelian disease genes, if you look at from 1985, well, before 1985, we just had syndrome delineation, very few genes were known. And then once we had positional cloning, and between that and the Human Genome Project, a lot of the rare disease genes were identified. And then probably right up to the time NGS came into view, that discovery was very slow and steady. And with next generation sequencing, a lot of the rare disease genes that had not been identified started to get identified, but then the rest of the exponential increase has been because of ultra rare disease gene identification. There are probably about 250 of these every year that get reported, and that's only going to continue. So what is next generation genomic sequencing then? So for those of you who are not geneticists in the audience, I put these slides together, and I apologize for the geneticists in the audience. If you look at our DNA, we have about 3 billion base pairs that are packaged into 20,000 genes. When the first human genome was sequenced as part of the Human Genome Project, it took 10 years. It was finished in 2000, and it cost close to $3 billion. Now we can do it in days, and the costs are continuing to decrease. Commercial laboratories in the United States offer an exome sequencing for about $1,500. A whole genome might cost about $20,000. If you do it on a research basis where a lot of the analysis is up to you, you can get an exome for about $100 right now. And a genome you can get for about $3,000. So to kind of, again, this is for the non-geneticists in the audience. If you look at NGS, we all know our genes are made up of exons and introns. The exons are the coding parts of the gene that contribute to the protein. If you sequence all of the gene, all 20,000 genes, including the exons and the introns, that's about 3 billion DNA letters, and that's whole genome sequencing. If on the other hand, just like we follow the normal way a gene makes its protein product, the introns are typically spliced out, and all the exons are spliced together, and that's the coding portion of the genome. If you sequence only the coding portion, then you're doing whole exome sequencing. And that's about 1% of the entire genome, about 30 million base pairs. And because ultimately it's the exons that are spliced together that make up the protein product. And if you really look at it, about 85% of disease-causing variants for Mendelian genes are probably in the coding region. So exome is really a good, cheaper, and probably will get you a significant number of the diagnoses. But genome is certainly better, and I'll show you some comparisons later. So, but when should we apply next generation sequencing? Does everybody need to be sequenced, and how cost efficient is it? So the answer to that first question is not everybody who presents with an undiagnosed disease that you suspect is rare should be sequenced. We don't need to do that. We did the study at our own medical center. We took about 500 of our patients that had come to a genetics clinic, and we looked at them to see how many of those individuals got a diagnosis with the traditional way of a geneticist seeing the patient and doing targeted testing. That results in a diagnosis in about 50%. And interestingly, if you look at those diagnoses, most of those are made within the first visit and the first level of testing, as this bar graph here shows you. And after that, if you continue to test, the yield with the traditional testing starts to drop. So maybe that 50% that don't get a diagnosis with this traditional testing are probably all the ones that are likely to have rare or ultra-rare disease. And then we look at the economics of continuing to persist with that traditional testing for that group that doesn't get a diagnosis initially. And the cost per diagnosis after a second evaluation is about $26,000. So we feel like at that point, probably doing NGS after that first time you've seen the patient and you don't have a diagnosis is pretty cost effective. So this is kind of the traditional way it's done in clinic as well now. If you don't have a diagnosis with the traditional testing, you can move very quickly to the exome to find an answer. If you compare exome and genome sequencing, exome is fairly good, but you don't cover all 30 million base pairs. There are going to be gaps across those genes. About 2 to 5% of the exome remains uncovered, even with the best of the capture kits. For example, there are certain regions of the genome, regions that are rich in GC, the 2 letters of the DNA that are made from G and C. Those areas are hard to capture with the PCR-based methods. And also, the advantage of exome is you have fewer variants you have to sift through. So your needle in the haystack problem when you're looking at so many variants for one individual is less with an exome. We have about 5,000 to 10,000 variants per exome that need to be sifted through. It's also less intensive with the analysis and the storage requirements. It's also cheaper, as I just showed you. And the overall, across the literature, our studies clinically and other studies have shown that the yield with exome sequencing for those 50% that don't get it by traditional methods is about 25 to 40%. So it's a pretty good yield. Previously, those individuals had no way of getting a diagnosis at all. And then if you look at genome sequencing, it provides, much more uniform coverage across the exome, but the depth is decreased. And I'll show you what I mean by that in just a minute for those of you who are not geneticists. And because you don't have the depth, you might miss certain forms of variants, such as a mosaic variant. The problem with the genome is you're going to get a lot more variants just because you have more DNA letters to sift through. The average genome will have about 20,000 variants that you have to computationally go through. It's more expensive. There's more computational burden, and storage requirements are much more high. And so the cost of storage is also high for this. In our experience, the genome provides about 10 to 15% additional diagnosis over the whole exome sequencing. So it's a pretty good yield if you don't have an answer by the exome. And the reason for that is, in addition to uniform coverage, it also finds variants that are not in the coding region, splicing variants that could be intronic, as well as copy number variants that the exome is really not good at picking up. I'm not going to go much more into the intricacies of both of these technologies, just to give you an overview. So how does an NGS workflow look like? Well, you fragment genomic DNA, and you put in some adapters, and then you attach it to a flow cell, and then you attach the sequencing primers, and you sequence through PCR. Exome is PCR based, genome can be PCR free. So, there are less errors there. And then the computer kind of reads off the sequencing, and you get the sequence in fragments. You probably get 1 billion fragments, and each of this is pretty small. Each of the fragments you get is about only 150 base pairs. So you kind of align them to the reference genome in tandem with overlapping fragments, so you can read the DNA letters. And when I talked about depth earlier, that refers to, for example, the number of reads you have. The larger the reads are, the more deep the sequence is, and the more accurate your interpretation or the variant calling is going to be. So, for example, in this individual, you can see the letter C is replaced by a letter A, but not in all of the reads, in about half the reads. So this individual has one of the two alleles. One of the alleles has this variant A. And so it could be a dominant disorder and he could be affected, or it could be a recessive disorder and this individual is a carrier. The second example here shows you an individual where the G is replaced by a C throughout. So this individual is homozygous and could have an autosomal recessive disorder with the homozygous variant. And then you have another instance here where there are two base pairs missing. So this is an indel, and so this is going to cause a frame shift change further down, probably a deleterious change. So this is a very simplified way of showing you how the variant calling looks like. But then variant analysis further downstream is where all the complexities lie. So we talked about the size of the genome and the exome. That in of itself causes a lot of variants to be called across those 20,000 genes. If you look at all of us as human beings, every 1 in 20 nucleotides is going to be different from one person to another. So that in of itself adds to the complexity. And we also, each one of us will carry thousands of small insertions, deletions, duplications. And most of those have no consequence at all on our health. So finding the one that's actually deleterious and causal can be a challenge. We also, each of us will have thousands of what we call as non-synonymous variants. So these are variants that actually impact the protein that the gene is making. And if you look at loss of function variants, which are hugely important in rare and ultra-rare diseases as disease-causing variants, we all have about 100 of those. And if you look at de novo variants that we didn't inherit from our parents, but that started with us, that's very important in ultra-rare diseases. A lot of them are caused by de novo variants. We each carry about 30 of those. And so, sifting through this, as you can imagine, can be pretty challenging. So you may overlook something that's there and miss it because you're not paying attention to it. So how do you do this then for rare and ultra-rare genetic disorders? How do you sift through all of this data? So we already went through the sequencing part of this. And then you align it to the reference genome. We went through this. One good thing that we have is the ability to filter against parents. So if you have an affected child and you have the parents available, it helps you to weed out so many of those variants. Otherwise, you would have a difficult time with. It also increases your detection rate when you have parents, de novo variants, for example, or compound heterozygous variants. We also have the advantage now with more and more individuals getting sequenced with the exome and genome. We have large control databases that are available. A lot of these data are free, and so you can cross-check your particular variant to see is it present in healthy controls or not. And for rare and ultra-rare genetic disorders, because they're Mendelian, what you really want to do is look at de novo variants, X-linked variants, and recessive variants. And once you've found those variants, further curation is done manually. You look at all of these variants, look and see what you know about those variants and the genes. Are they associated with human disease? And if so, do you have a diagnosis? Is this variant just a variant of uncertain significance, or you're not sure in that case? Or could this be a new candidate gene and you are pursuing a new disease association for an ultra-rare disorder? So that's kind of the workflow. In our lab, when we do this kind of framework, after the bioinformatician does all of those, we probably get between 40 to 50 variants per patient. So there's a lot of work that goes into it on the back end of this as well. So if you look at what's happening in the US in genomic sequencing and specifically related to rare and ultra-rare diagnostics, the NIH has invested in a network called the Undiagnosed Diseases Network. There are other genomic sequencing initiatives that I won't go through. Some of these are focused on rare diseases in part, but they're more broader than the UDN. So I'll focus on the UDN. The UDN is, I'm part of the UDN, and so this network will allow individuals across the United States to apply to the network if they have an undiagnosed rare or ultra-rare disorder. They may not know whether it's rare or ultra-rare, but it's undiagnosed, and these disorders tend to go undiagnosed because they're so hard to identify. Everything is done free for them once they are accepted by the network. International applicants are also accepted as long as they can make it to the US. Once they get to the US, everything is borne by the study. There are 12 clinical sites. We at Duke are one of them. And so patients travel to these sites once they're accepted. We also have a lot of cores supporting the research mission of the network and the diagnostics. So sequencing is done through a core. Both genome and exome are done. We have metabolomics. We also have animal modeling facilities and a biorepository to store samples and a coordinating center. So the UDN value is that all the clinical evaluations for the patients happens in a very concentrated way in 5 days. So they get very deep phenotyping. And the phenotyping is fairly standardized. So there's data sharing that can happen across the network. And one of the really important things about this network is there are 2 analyses of every genome or exome that is done in the UDN. It's done by the core lab, which is a clinical lab, and then every clinical site will do a research analysis. And we found that the diagnosis rate is significantly increased by that dual analysis. And in addition, we have all of the research approaches, RNA-seq model organisms that I already talked about. So if you look at the statistics of the UDN, so far we've gotten about close to 5,000 applications across the 12 sites. And 1,400 evaluations have been completed, and the diagnosis rate is about 33%. One important statistic to remember here is patients who apply to the UDN have already been through their rare disease evaluation as well. A lot of them have had an exome that hasn't shown an answer. So the 33% is pretty remarkable. At our Duke clinical site, we've gotten about 500 applications. We've finished over 200 evaluations, and we have a slightly higher diagnosis rate than the network at 43%. We account for close to 20% of the network diagnosis, and we've had the highest number of new gene discoveries for ultra-rare diseases. One of the things we've realized in the UDN is diagnosis of these ultra-rare disorders requires efforts beyond sequencing. And this is a busy graph, but it shows you how the process works in about 800 patients that were evaluated. What I want you to focus on is the 2 tan areas in the first 2 bars. So that represents the number of individuals whose diagnosis was made by just straightforward sequencing, whether it was an exome or a genome. And they represented about 35% of the diagnosis. All of the others in green required things beyond the exome and genome. Maybe the genome gave us a clue. There was a candidate we had to pursue, or there was a variant of uncertain significance we had to do functional work for. Or sometimes the genome missed things, and based on the phenotype, we had to do further targeted testing. So there's a lot of nuances that go into ultra-rare disease diagnosis that is pretty challenging. And that requires really intense effort on that N of one patient. Every patient with these diseases is different. And it takes a lot of time to do this. So what happens as a consequence of the diagnoses that have been made through the network? First of all, we are able to end the diagnostic odyssey for these most difficult of cases. At currently, over 75% of individuals who enter the UDN have already had a negative exome. We've had medical management changes in 20 to 30%. Now, this is not a treatment, certainly not a cure, but maybe surveillance could be changed. Maybe a particular medication would work better than the other, for example, in epilepsy, those kinds of changes. However, for a few, there have been specific treatments, gene therapies. We had a child with a riboflavin transporter disorder that responded beautifully to riboflavin and is doing really well. And importantly, we can give accurate reproductive risk for future pregnancy for prevention of further affected children. And there have been new ultra-rare disease gene associations. We've had 27 published, and probably there are twice that many that are in the pipeline. As you can tell, it's intense. So it takes us on average about 2 years to get a new disease gene to publication. So we have enough evidence to support it. And the other thing the UDN does is exchange data and best practices within the network and outside the network. So in the future, we can improve the diagnosis of these disorders and the care of these patients. There's an organization called the UDN International, where other medical centers across the world share data with us, share similar practices and diagnoses and variants. I think there is a site at Gangaram Hospital in New Delhi as well that recently joined the UDNI. So I'll give you one example of an ultra-rare disorder discovery that happened to the UDN. We had an 8-year-old that we saw at our site with macrocephaly, cognitive impairments, facial dysmorphisms. His previous exome had been negative. We reanalyzed it using our own research pipeline and found a variant in a candidate gene that had not been associated with disease before. So we did case matching functional studies, found 5 other patients, all had de novo truncating variants in this ASXL2 gene. And we were able to show it was a dominant negative mechanism of disease, and this shows you the pictures. This was published in 2017. Since then, we've had 50 cases, but only 50. So just think how frustrating it is for families who have a child with an ultra-rare disorder to have any progress, whether it's with the phenotype and whether it's with treatment. We're trying to do more research into both of those areas. We have a registry now, and we're getting phenotypic spectrum and natural history. And we're looking into therapeutics with repurposing already known compounds, because there's not going to be any new molecular development as far as therapies are concerned. There are lots of challenges to ultra-rare diseases. But there are challenges to NGS as well. Apart from all the successes, there are challenges. If you flip the numbers I told you, most individuals don't get a diagnosis of NGS, 50 to 75% don't. And the next diagnostic steps can be very difficult, cost more money. There are 3rd-generation sequencing approaches like long reads. Instead of getting 150 base pair reads, you can get several kilobases long reads, so the accuracy improves. And then you can also have copy number variants found in a better way. Very expensive, though. It's $20,000, $30,000 per genome. Sometimes you have to go back and phenotype the patient further. You have to reanalyze the genomic data. All of that requires time and money. One of the challenges we face in the US, even in a clinical setting, is insurance reimbursement for an exome is very patchy. The reality is sequencing is much cheaper than doing multiple single gene tests and panels, but insurance companies don't always look at it that way. And the federal government has a health insurance plan for children and adults who don't have private insurance, and the federal health insurance plans do not cover sequencing. So we do face that challenge a lot. And then the public has a lot of ethical concerns regarding all the sequencing data that we obtain. Who's going to have ultimate access to it? Who are we sharing data with? So those are discussions we have all the time. And we have concerns about that too as scientists. And the other thing is, as I've shown you, we often get more diagnosis of ultra-rare diseases than rare. And that's a good thing, because otherwise these individuals never would get a diagnosis, but they face their own challenges. Many people tell us, you're just telling me the name of a gene. That's all I know, but I don't know anything else. Where do I go from here? So because natural history therapeutics are challenging for this group of disorders. And also NGS doesn't detect many other types of genetic disorders, such as epigenetic, mitochondrial, et cetera, et cetera. So to summarize, despite its problems, NGS has really transformed the diagnostic process for rare and ultra-rare diseases. It really cut short the diagnostic odyssey in those individuals who don't get a diagnosis by the traditional targeted testing. And 25 to 50% of those individuals do get resolved. It has contributed to the scientific understanding of rare and ultra-rare diseases with a lot of pathogenetic studies that occur downstream. It has resulted in changes in medical management, genetic counseling. For some, there are specific treatments, and it has resulted in an exponential increase in new ultra-rare disease discoveries. And those, to me, are the next challenge, because even in the United States, with all the resources, there is not much funding available for individual disorders. So these communities are really struggling. How do we meet, and how do we as investigators meet their needs for next steps, including therapeutics? So with that, I will stop.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Vandana. You really simplified genetics for non-geneticists like us. And we have a better understanding of what NGS is. It was also very exciting to learn about the ultra-rare disease network and the fantastic work that is going on in your lab and at other sites. It was also good to know that Gangaram Hospital is a part of the UDN. Since we are running a bit late with the sessions, any questions that would come for you would be emailing you, and we shall be getting your responses to them. Same with the other speakers as well. We would not be able to take any questions at the end of the session, but we will be communicating with you in case we get any questions.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak. I'll sign off now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now we have our next speaker, Dr. Meenakshi Bhatt. She's a professor and Mazumdar Shaw Research Chair, Center for Human Genetics, Bangalore. And Madam will be talking about rare diseases, what we have achieved, and the way forward.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to start by thanking the organizers and you, Dr. Mahapatra, for having introduced me. So since we are running late and a lot of people have said what there is to be said about rare diseases, I just thought we'd talk about the journey that we have gone through. So our journey at the Center for Human Genetics began in 2006 with clinical services that we set up here. Initially, as a clinical geneticist, we were seeing only a handful of cases that came inadvertently referred through super specialists. And over the period of years, we today, I think, see about 2,500 new families per year, most of them representing Karnataka state, but also people who come from outside. Obviously, when you need to investigate these individuals, you need to have the genetic testing facilities. And to start off with, we started off with the routine karyotype, went on to FISH, have MLPA, then we had arrays, and now, of course, there's NGS. And today, because we cater to mostly the lower socioeconomic status referrals that come through various different sources, we at the Center for Human Genetics, majority of our tests are done free of costs. Today, we possibly do about 5,000 tests free of cost and a small percentage at cost. So we are not for profit, but we are supported by the government of Karnataka. And this just shows what the policy of funding certain areas does to start initiating with not only getting a right diagnosis, but also to start the journey of how to treat these people appropriately. Onwards came to the point that whenever you're diagnosing conditions, sometimes only a fraction of them have got therapies, and therefore you need to talk about prevention. Now, we very early on started associating with the Fetal Medicine Center, which is in Bangalore, and I have to highlight that most of the preventive fetal medicine interventions, whether it is NIPT, whether it is interventional invasive testing, or it's really good scans to pick up birth defects, are mostly in the private sector through the country. I think this is an area that we need to highlight. So we approximately do about 1,000 prenatal joint consultations with fetal medicine and genetics. And this has been quite an education for us, but has also been helpful for the families. So the numbers are huge, but still a drop in the ocean. So today we have got about data from about 30,000 families that we have seen over the last 15 years. And we decided that this is the time to start making a database out of it. So we are now digitizing our data. We have composed of really an AI-based live database, which is online and which can be shared and which can keep all material, including photographs, with all the ethical considerations taken into consideration. And that's what we are aiming towards. But whenever you do these things in large numbers, you need people and you need trained people. And as you have seen, the speakers throughout have been talking about the need for trained manpower. Although we have today half a dozen centers in the country that can train doctors in genetics, not only analyzing data, but also being able to counsel and manage families with rare disorders, it becomes imperative that we have good quality training programs that can reach a larger number of population. So whenever the infant mortality rate of a country drops below 30 per thousand, according to the WHO, this is when rare diseases and rare genetic diseases become a priority to be looked at. We certainly in Karnataka have reached below 30. So this becomes an important thing for us to consider, and we will have to start focusing on this as a public health problem. Therefore, we need to think about better ways on how we can see all patients rather than some patients. Seeing 30,000 patients over 10 or 15-year period is still a drop in an ocean, where the state itself has approximately 3 million people affected with rare diseases. So I think we need to reach out to further numbers of people. And of course, we have said that the first step towards this will be newborn screening. The second step towards this will be better preventive diagnosis, because for disorders that happen, which are genetic in nature, at least a third of them are recessive, and therefore they will happen again and again within families. And if we do not identify this and advise pregnancy testing, especially for common disorders such as hemoglobinopathies, sickle cell anemias, and other such conditions, we would be missing an opportunity to reduce the burden on society in a society that is resource constrained. So then comes the fact that there are already individuals who are there whose voice is not being heard in spite of having so many support groups, and therefore you require treatments that are available to them. Right through the session, we have talked about the high cost of therapy that comes as a result of a lot of imports that happen, and the investment into research for a small number of people that need to be reached. Therefore, trying to walk the talk, we have at the Center for Human Genetics already started these sort of initiatives. About 7 years ago, we partnered with a local company, a food company out of Bangalore, and started making metabolic nutritional diets. And I've got a few tins here. You know, this is PKU, and similarly for about 14 other disorders, we managed to make diets which became very useful because it was at about 1/15th to 1/20th the cost of an imported diet, and easily available and taste compatible to the local population. And this, therefore, our children started living. So our children who have got organic acidemias and have got conditions such as phenylketonuria suddenly started getting appropriate diet. We had to train a dietitian on the job because there are no formal metabolic dietitian training programs yet in place. And then our children started going to school. So then we required things that were not milk tins, but real food to take along. So now we've got follow-on diets, and now we've got things like flour that is being made, which is low-protein flour, biscuits that are being made, and we are developing drinks that are going with the children to school. And doing all this, we've got about 250 patients on various sorts of dietary therapies. Obviously, this is the first step towards small things that you can do with innovation within the state. If you look at what's happening within the state as far as therapies is concerned, Dr. Sanjeev has already spoken about the numbers of lysosomal storage disorders that have managed to achieve treatments. We've got now 42 patients getting free of cost therapy, some because of the charitable access program of the companies that manufacture it, and some as a result of governmental funding. Now, state government, despite their own reservations, especially the Karnataka state government, has been absolutely exemplary in the way they have approached this. And we are the only state which, for the last 5 years, have been continuously funding therapy for these rare disorders. But we have to understand that this is only a fraction of the conditions that they can afford therapy for. And more, as people become aware, we'll have to have better ways of thinking of how to distribute the government money to be more equitable and how to cover the disorders that we require to cover in toto. So today we can treat primary immunodeficiency diseases, lysosomal storage disorders, which is being treated in the rare Department of Excellence in Indira Gandhi Institute. But we also need to reach out to other resources. I know that the government is making efforts at making bone marrow transplantation affordable and accessible to some of the hemoglobinopathies, and that's a step in the right direction. But we also need to look at other things which can make things better. Most recently in this state, there was a child that had been given first gene therapy for spinal muscular atrophy, and there's an NGO that is trying to manufacture antisense oligonucleotide therapy for Duchenne muscular dystrophy at a fraction of the cost that is the FDA approved product outside, that has been approved outside for DMD. But where we are just small individual strides that we have been taking. How can we make this better? This is where the state comes in. The state's role is not just to fund individuals that require therapy. That is one of the things that they need to do. But I think what's more important is that to have a proper newborn screening program in place, whether it's state, because state is still in charge of the health that we are looking at as far as having some sort of independence to decide what is to be the priority diseases for the state. We also need better local registries, even if we have state health-based registries. And all this data that we are gathering, or all the information that's coming out of molecular research, or from centers and the pedigrees that we are collecting, or the NGS facilities that are privately available within the state, which Dr. Vandana explained is required for further diagnosis. All this would require to be centrally monitored. And I think that's where we are lacking. All of us are doing our individual bits, but we do not have a site which can comprehensively keep this information. And so in the end, I would just like to say that maybe the Ministry of Child and Mother Welfare would probably have a website for rare diseases where we could incorporate the data that is already available, maybe information leaflets, maybe the facilities that are looking at rare diseases, so that families can access information about where to go and what to understand about the most common disorders that are available within the states. And with that, I will leave you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. Clearly, this connects with our public health approaches. Your pointer that with shrinking infant mortality rates, our focus on rare diseases would go up. And of course, India is in that zone of 28 to 30 infant mortality. And as we approach the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and of course, with different epidemiological transitions across different states, our interventions need to be very customized. Open research is yet another aspect where we need to share all the data that we have in public domain and also communicate more actively. Thank you so much, madam, for those perspectives. It has been a very fantastic academic feast, this session. Just like we can go on listening to all the evidence that is available, all the experience that is there. Thank you so much, respected panelists, for participating in this session. Any questions we have from the audience, we'll share it with you over emails, and we shall stay connected.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, madam.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Meenakshi and Dr. Thank you so much. Moving on to our next session, we have a representation from Tamil Nadu. Dr. D. Anuradha, Professor of Pediatrics and in charge of Medical Genetics, ICH Ekmore, would talk about state perspective from Tamil Nadu. Over to you, madam.
Am I audible?
Yes, madam. Yes.
A very good afternoon. Actually, I have to thank the organizers and my director, Dr. LRC, on behalf of whom I am talking in this session. So already too much has been talked about the intro to rare disease. So I'll just tell briefly about what is happening in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, actually, is one of the few states that has a state level committee to identify and treat patients with rare diseases. There is a medical genetics department in ICH, and which was started in March 2018. Here, we are on an average, we are working on 6 days a week, and on an average, we see about 60 to 70 patients per month. With all the basic support given by all the other departments, all preliminary investigations are done, and with the suspicion of any rare disorder, they are referred to the clinic, where further investigations are done with the support of a biochemistry and pathology lab. So, if it is a lysosomal storage disorder, they are subjected to a dried blood spot test, and the confirmation is done by mutation analysis. The karyotyping is done by the pathology lab, and we had a tandem mass spectry for IEM disorders. Apart from this, we offer genetic counseling not only for these patients, but prenatal mothers who are referred from our attached obstetric hospital who has any abnormality in their antenatal reports. They are given counseling, for example, hemoglobinopathies or previous children with some chromosomal disorder. They are given a counseling, and if necessary, they are subjected to a amniocentesis at radiology department in Madras Medical College. And these patients are also given regular counseling, and follow-up is noticed. Apart from this, we have newborn screening programs, and screening tests are done for disorders like congenital adrenal hyperplasia. Any patient presenting with any difficult presentation or very sick, we have the facilities for comprehensive intensive care management, and we also have a daycare center for enzyme replacement therapies. Academically, we are giving teachings for the postgraduate, undergraduate students and nursing students, and also training for the technicians. So with this comprehensive medical, surgical and supportive care, we need only a strengthening of our services so that we can go a better step ahead in treating these children with rare disorders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, madam. That was really crisp. It is also very heartening to understand how Tamil Nadu is going about rare diseases, the different efforts it's putting in. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes. So we have a break. So we'll be mulling over the break. We are already running much late. So we'll be going straight into the next session. But before doing that, I would again request all the audience to register for the Global Consultation on International Rare Disease that is coming up on 28th of February. You'll find the registration link in the lobby when you go out by clicking on that icon. Now, in the next session, we have 3 very experienced speakers, and they'll be talking about role of private and public sector units. Now, that means we need to engage with different stakeholders, and it should be a partnership model. I'd request the speakers to be crisp as we are running a bit late. So we have about 5 minutes per speaker. I request Mr. Raj Bhaskar, Post-Approval Access Lead Growth and Emerging Markets, TAKIDA, for his talk on innovation in collaboration for rare diseases.
Thank you, Dr. Mohapatra. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, very much.
Also see my screen possible.
Yeah.
Excellent. So thanks for having me here. My name is Raj. I'm based in Singapore with Takeda Pharmaceuticals. And today I'm going to speak about the public-private partnerships, which is something, a topic very close to Takeda. And I believe some of you would have had a chance to hear from my other colleague, Philip, from the North Region Consultation. So these slides have been adapted quite similar to that presentation. So the purpose of my presentation is to showcase that we are quite open, quite explorative on the public-private partnerships, and very much committed from a rare disease perspective. So these are the two angles in which I'll be covering. And also my focus will be more towards the access piece of these partnerships. Okay.
Mr. Raj, are you on the screen?
Yeah. Can you see my presentation?
Not yet. Sorry to interrupt you in between.
That's fine. Is it visible?
No.
Not really.
Yes, now we're getting it. Yes.
Oh, excellent. Okay, thank you.
Can you put it on full screen?
Yeah. Okay. So I believe most of you, thank you, Dr. Mohapatra, because I'm in a blind spot because I can't see the cam. So if anything, please give me a shout. Thank you. Okay. So for some of you who already know Takeda, we are Japanese top 10 biopharma leader. And one of the reasons, as I mentioned, is we are very much committed on the rare disease space, and that definitely forms a major piece of our portfolio. So that is something which continues to drive us to look out for potential partners across the entire ecosystem. Okay. And I represent a team which is called Access to Medicines. And this team is very much looking at forging alliances across the entire stakeholder set and enabling, distributing the medicines to the underserved populations. And growth and emerging markets, specifically on the low middle income countries, continue to remain a top priority in our radar. So it's very much in sync with the kind of partnerships what Gopal, who heads our India PMA team, is kind of forging, working closely with PHFI. So these are the type of initiatives which we are closely associated with. Okay. I think most of the expert speakers have given you a very clear download about the status of rare diseases. And what I think was one of the key takeaway from the previous presentations are, number one, the heterogeneous nature of this particular disease makes it even more challenging. But what was also interesting was the challenges remain the same in terms of having this diverse population, lack of data, and also looking at the diagnosis where we stand, right? So if we look from a Takeda perspective, one of the key reasons we are looking at is we are very much sure that this cannot be tackled by a single player. So it requires the joint efforts of almost the entire health system, in the whole health ecosystem, not to mention the governments, inclusive of patients as well. Right. So whenever you have a chance to visit Takeda website, you know that we have been very, very active when it comes to the R&D side of public-private partnerships for rare diseases. And this is valid and true even when we continue towards downstream, up to the level of access and in enabling these medicines reach the right patients at the right time. So we are looking at diverse skills, we are looking at a wider impact, and also very open in terms of forging collaborations with government stakeholders and in kind of enabling policies. So that is something which continues to drive in most of the programs, and how we try to attack not just one piece of the puzzle, but through the entire patient journey. And I think most of the expert speakers, I think they clearly called out, we cannot address any one particular problem, but this is something which we need to look at the whole entire patient journey of where we can collaborate, where we can come out with innovative programs right from upfront in terms of diagnosis or creating awareness, as well as kind of enabling these treatments, and not just stopping there, but also going beyond and providing beyond the medicines patient support as well. So we kind of club this under health system strengthening focus, as I said before, very much focused in collaborating with policymakers and enabling these healthy discussions which paves in, different solutions, or at least kickstarts solutions. And we also come out with innovative affordability programs. I believe Dr. Mahapatra put a nice word, sustainability, specifically with rare diseases. I guess this is going to remain a challenge, and we are very open to address this challenge by working with multiple parties, and not just addressing a problem singularly, but looking at a long-term, solutions, capacity building solutions. So just to again sum up from that perspective, I have just captured the entire health system, the entire health ecosystem. We have worked with different organizations, both in the private side, supranational organizations, governments, policy and regulators, as well as patient organizations. In fact, in the next slide, one of our initiative, I thought we should just mention. It's called Blueprint Initiative, which has been we have been steering it for quite some time. A similar forum, but at a global level, wherein we believe almost all different stakeholder sets, because we believe by creating such a platform, there is an opportunity like what we saw today, experts sharing their challenges, sharing their experience, best practices, and how we can mobilize these collaborative action that will eventually lead for potential solutions. And what we have seen, something very interesting post-COVID, is we are looking at many asymmetric players, digital partners, funding partners, as well as possibly what we could not imagine, like in terms of virtual reality type of techno collaborations that is coming in vogue, considering how we have shifted from pre-COVID days, right? And lastly, I think it's also immense pleasure for me to share with you some of the partners with whom we have been having long-standing relationships. And I'm quite wanted to call out, because some of these projects, what we have done, we are continuing to work on, touches upon the essence of challenges which were mentioned by the previous players. So no doubt, I think Gopal has managed to get you on board, because we can also showcase some of the examples which touches like capacity building initiatives and training initiatives, as well as supporting in the registry, data registry type of projects. So overall, holistically, this is something which we continue to do so, and we are quite open, as I said, looking forward to future collaborations. So thank you for the opportunity, and again, wishing you all the very best as we join hands in finding solutions, in terms of rare disease perspective and addressing the challenge as we go. Thank you, Dr. Mahapatra.
Thank you, Mr. Raj, for that crisp presentation. Gives a very comprehensive global picture to it. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Mr. Pramod K. Sinha, formerly with the Department of Public Enterprises, top management, member of MNCs and Scope, New Delhi. And he would be talking about public sector undertakings, key stakeholder in creating health avenues. Public PSUs, as we know, put in massive efforts in terms of their CSR initiatives and otherwise as well. So let's listen to Sinha sir. Sir, welcome to the panel, and over to you.
Good morning, everybody. So sharing. I'm just trying to share my screen.
Yes, sir. Yes, now we're getting your screen, sir.
Now we are getting?
Yes, yes. So can you hide that ribbon that we get, the share screen, stop sharing, that ribbon? Yeah, press on the hide button. No. Yeah. Great.
That's
Thank
right.
you. Perfect. Thank you.
I would like to convey my sincere thanks to People Health Foundation and our anchor, Dr. Mahapatra. It was really nice to hear Mr. Raj Bhaskar, especially the initiatives taken by Takeda, in not only for rare disease, but as a health global scenario and supporting the ecosystem. So definitely any ecosystem would definitely love to have stakeholders like Takeda. Back to our Indian scenario, and especially since most of our health professionals have already conveyed on medical part, especially the medical requirements, I would just leave this side. Back to the core requirement, as even Mr. Raj Bhaskar also conveyed, the rare disease has been passing through a scenario where it has been addressed by many stakeholders, by many state governments, and as many of you might be knowing, public sectors have been the champion as far as social responsibilities are concerned. Right from independence to these days, from moving 5 PSUs to close to 350 PSUs, they have been doing extraordinary contributions in every sphere of the society and bringing laurel to the nation in many fields. Back to the funding requirement, which has been the core issue and challenge rather in today's scenario. One of the corpus of corporate social responsibility of PSCs could be definitely judiciously utilized for this core area also. PSUs of late have already been supporting in many areas and in particular the health system. If you look at the data from 2014 to 2019, out of close to 1 lakh crore
मीटिंग अपना अभी हो गया आप 2 मिनट के लिए आप उधर हम लोग बुलाने से हम लोग नहीं तो आप आ जाएंगे
I would kindly mute your
investment of 69 close to 70,000 crore. Even if you look at top 10 companies which combines both from private and public, right from Reliance to ONGC, IOC, SDFC and all, they have been supporting this endeavor, and what is required is approaching these sponsors or stakeholders so that besides other areas of the health, they can also come forward and support the endeavor of various state governments, including Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and other southern states, and addressing the challenges of rare disease. This you can see the corpus and CSR expenditure. Close to 34% of this expenditure has been in the areas of hunger, poverty and health, and definitely this can find a place for rare disease also. With paucity of time, I am not going detail into it, but you can look at the areas which are mostly part of the Schedule 7 activities which has been approved by the government for conducting CSR activities, and there have been definitely some changes with the current budget which will also be helping, especially for unutilized part of the fund, so that there will be more pressure on all stakeholders, including PSCs, to utilize as far as possible in the current year or the same year itself. This is again the CSR expenditure you can see in terms of percentage. Earlier it was in terms of crores of rupees, and you can see that 34% goes in one of those areas where rare disease can find place. In order to have a close understanding of stakeholders, I thought it was pertinent to inform the audience that how PSUs are working in the national domain, how they have been classified as Maharatnas, Navaratnas, Mini Ratnas, and others. And fortunately, one of my colleague, Mr. S.P. Himanshu, who will be the next speaker, who also belongs to one of the Maharatna companies, and he has been a very experienced, learned person with more than 3 decades working in PSU, currently as executive director, and definitely he will throw more light on specific PSU of NMDC and others. These are the financial health of PSUs, and you can see that how significantly they have been contributing in every domain, including contribution to the exchequer. These are the list of PSCs, especially Maharatnas and Navaratnas, so that the stakeholders who would like to approach PSCs should have a fair understanding who are the PSCs who should be approached on priority. These are the Navaratnas. As you are already aware, Section 135 of Companies Act provides for CSR and then expenditure, the manner it could be done. There have been some changes with the current budget, as for CSR expenditure below 50 lakh, there is no more requirement of CSR committee, and board of the PSUs are empowered to directly do the same. Above 50 lakh, definitely the role of the CSR committee will come. They are the activities of Schedule 7, which can help the stakeholders to understand and to approach the donors or the stakeholders who can support their endeavor. This slide throws light on how PSCs have been supporting the national challenges, especially Corona kind of environment, where they have been supported with 2,500 crore to PM CARES Fund. Again, Schedule C detail. I would not like to go detail on education and awareness, as many of the health professionals have already discussed. The only thing I would like to convey that both private and public stakeholders, as Mr. Raj Bhaskar has also highlighted, the public-private partnership should come forward to support the endeavor of organizations like People Health Foundation, who are taking sincere initiative to highlight the challenges at the regional level, at the national level, and definitely they are also going at international level. It will also address some of the stakeholders of PSCs who are already supporting this endeavor like this, to address the challenges of rare disease, how they would like to get benefited, and to present before such officials who matters, so that rare disease, which has no longer been rare now with so much of wide publicity and awareness, should be addressed in a manner it should be. With these words, I'd like to again convey my sincere thanks to Dr. Mahapatra and team of Rare to Rare People Foundation for taking up this challenging issue at the national level, and definitely we would like to support their endeavor wherever possible, so that it not only influence the national policy, but also the stakeholders who can not only command but also can influence the services in best possible manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Sinha sir. CSR engagement is very meaningful for rare diseases, and we thank you for providing those very data supported slides. and insights.
You gave me only 3 to 5 minutes, so I thought let me touch
Really,
upon.
yeah, apologies for the very
No, it's
short.
all right. Everything. No, it's a way of life now. You have to catch.
Right. Thank you, sir. We have our next speaker, Mr. S.P. Himanshu, ED, HR, NDMC Hyderabad, and sir would be talking about current scope of PSUs in health sector and potential to explore newer health areas. Himanshu, sir, the floor is yours. Sir, can you unmute yourself?
My mic is unmute now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Sinha Saab, who was addressing earlier, and Madam Gupta for inviting me to this very, very important seminar. Actually, we are a public sector undertaking and under Northna category, and our main is iron ore, exploration, mining, and selling. We are one of the very big iron ore are also. I have shared my presentation with Madam, and will be able to share those things that we are able to spend more than whatever limit is fixed by the Companies Act government of a 2%.
Right. Did we lose a connection over there?
He has already shared his slide.
Yeah. Organizers, can you please help me confirm this? Have we lost connection with Dr. Himanshu? Dr. Himanshu, can you please confirm you're able to, if I'm audible at your end? Okay, it seems we lost connection with him. While he joins back, Sinha sir, would you like to? Yes. Would you like to elaborate on any aspect that you talked about?
Yeah, two things definitely I would like to convey since you have allowed me. One thing, internationally, we have been talking about SDGs. And
yes. Not sure. Is this a connection problem at my end? I'm not even getting Dr. Sinha's voice and video. Okay. Right. So in the best interest of time, as we are running a bit late, as we connect back with Himanshu sir and Sinha sir, yeah, let's take the break while we fix this issue. We can have a break of a minute or so, and I'd request the audience back again to see if they could register for the global consultation on international rare diseases, and the tab is right there when you log into the lobby. We have also stalls in the exhibit area from different partners. You can go and explore that as well. And for some fun, we have a photo booth, and you can click a photograph. As soon as you log into the photo booth, you'll get a window opening up with a camera and all the banners around. And that could be a live picture that you attended this session. Somehow we've got some technological interruption into this session, and we are already running late. So I would request the organizers to join the speakers for the next session. Let's move on to the next session. We can always come back to this session.
Some problem in connectivity.
Yes, sir. There is some problem with the connectivity. I think we need to move on to the next session because we are already.
Please go ahead as per your schedule.
Yes. So coming next, we have reflections from patient support groups, and there we've got some speakers who will share different patient case stories. I would request Mr. Pawan Sharma, Managing Committee Member, Primary Immunodeficiency Patients with
Himanshu has joined. You can take Himanshu.
Okay, right. Yes, we have Himanshu sir back. Sir, sorry, we had some technological interruption there.
No, it was some technical glitch. So I'm again in. So I'll just finish things just in few minutes. Being a PSU and being empowered to spend on CSR and different areas of CSR like medical infrastructure, education, and income generation, self-subsidy, all things. I think what we have discussed with Madam, the area of rare diseases is still missing from the purview of CSR spend of PSUs, many PSUs, and this is one of the area that must be included in our CSR scope, so that we can help people who are unfortunately suffering from such kind of diseases, rare diseases, which is very, very expensive. They can't meet these expenses on their own. And this is a very good initiative taken by your organization, and you have rightly invited people from all fields and who can discuss on this matter and who can have a big brainstorming so that these rare diseases can be helped. At present, we are only dealing with the normal medical elements that a person suffers. We are impaling hospitals and we are setting up hospitals or different projects. We are extending medical help, but rare diseases we are not covering. So I'll not take much of your time. And I think there should be initiative at the right level, right direction, so that all PSUs can be included, and we may join hand with each other to cover up these areas. And nothing much from my side. I'll be very eager to again enter into any further discussion and further planning for any such initiative. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Himanshu sir. Also, thanks to Sinha sir and Mr. Raj for their talks in this session. We apologize for the technological glitch we had. We also thank the audience for bearing us through this. Moving on to the next session, we have the patient case stories, and request Mr. Pawan Sharma. Introducing him again, he's a managing committee member, Primary Immunodeficiency Patients Welfare Society, Bangalore, and he would share his story.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahapatra. I hope I am audible.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much, and not to waste time of the panelists and other participants, I'll quickly share my screen so that I can start with the presentation. Is my presentation visible?
Yes, yes.
Well, hello esteemed panelists, guests and friends. I am Pawan Sharma from the ITCT Bangalore, and I represent a society called as Primary Immunodeficiency Patients Welfare Society, known as PIDPWS in short. Now, interestingly, not many know what is primary immunodeficiency, including many respected medical practitioners as well. So you can imagine the challenges faced by the patients and their families. For the records, I explain what is PID. It is nothing but malfunction, disorder in or more components of human immune system. The PID patient faces multiple threats of infection because of his or her weak immune system, especially in the pandemic situation that we are facing. These PID patients and their families carry highest risk of catching the infection. Now, what is the common treatment for PID patients? To survive, a PID patient needs regular injections called as IVIG, which is intravenous immunoglobulin, every 3 weeks throughout their lifetime. So almost 2 injections per month, which is a heavy price for the family to pay. Even well-off families aren't able to afford the kind of expenses they have to bear. Now, what is PID-PWS? I'll take you quickly through the history of PID-PWS, for which I am a member. To overcome the challenges, the families of PID patients came together to help each other and sail through the hardships faced by the patients in getting the IVIG. As you know, IVIG is a very costly treatment, as mentioned earlier. Our vision is to help the PID patients lead a normal and dignified life as any individual without burdening their immediate families. We have adopted the following as our mission. Number 1, to explore public-private partnership for diagnosis and treatment for PID patients. Number 2, creating awareness amongst medical practitioners for early detection and treatment of PID. Then sensitize and encourage all state governments to arrange free IVIG as implemented by Government of Karnataka. Then encourage state governments to invest in research and development of diagnosis and treatment of PID. Let's look into the difficulties faced by PIDs as well as their families. In 2017-18, after tireless efforts in successful representation, we were able to convince officials with Government of Karnataka to allocate funds for the support of PID patients to get their life-saving supply of costly IVIG. This was of immense help to the registered PID patients of our society and was sufficient to support them for 2 years only. Now, after 2+ years of this one-time release of funds, which we have exhausted completely, now we are running from pillar to post and going the entire drill again to convince decision makers in the government. The dire need of funds is because of the urgency to get the life-saving IVIG for our registered PID patients. Presently, PID patients have to travel to Bangalore from distant places to get the IVIG infusion every 21 days along with their parents. More awareness amongst the decision makers in the government and the medical practitioners to attain its due attention what a serious disease like PID deserves as compared to other life-threatening diseases like HIV, cancer, hemophilia, thalassemia, etc. Our open up research and development centers for PID under the aegis of Government of Karnataka as well as Government of India. Now here we present our wish list, which as an organization and as a parents group of PID patients. Let's finally, what is that we seek from this panel? To allocate a budget or corpus fund under Department of Health and Family Welfare of every state for care or free treatment of PIDs, and every year the same scheme is taken forward so that there is no discontinuity in the care or treatment of these PIDs. To set up PID care centers at all government hospitals across every state so that the patients do not have to travel long distance for treatment. To set up Center of Excellence Diagnostics and Research Center at Bengaluru. To sensitize the medical fraternity about PID and its treatment so that the families do not have to run door to door to know or diagnose the cause for the infections. SCID is one of the severe conditions in PID. If not diagnosed immediately after birth, the child may succumb to death. So early diagnosis is highly important through newborn screening and timely treatment which will save the life of the child. I am not only hopeful but also confident that this empowered panel shall look into our representation with human approach and would help us achieve our dream of a graceful, normal life of a PID patient. Last but not the least, we would like to thank People to People Health Foundation and sponsors of this event who have organized this consultation event and have provided us opportunity to represent PID-PWS Bengaluru and share our present situation and future requirements. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Pavan. That was a crisp presentation, but very appealing. We hope something would start definitely moving in a positive direction for PID patients. Moving on to the next speaker, Mr. Prasanna Shirol, co-founder and executive director, ORDI. I request Mr. Prasanna to share his story, his side of the story. And sir, I request you to be crisp in the best interest of time. Over to you, sir.
Can you see my presentation?
Oh, not yet. Yeah, now it's on.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr.
Kindly put it on
Thank
full
you,
screen, sir.
Mr. Mohapatra, for this support. Yeah, it is full screen.
You need to press that.
I made it as full screen.
Yes. Yeah.
Now? Oh, yeah.
Now.
So first of all, I would like to thank PPHF, for giving this opportunity. I am Prasanna Shirol from ORDI. Just a brief introduction. ORDI is an umbrella organization working primarily in advocacy, awareness, and patient support, and supporting clinical trials and research and development in the area of rare diseases. We work through our rare disease helpline, providing information. Then we have a rare disease coordination center supporting the patients. We work with PAGs, international and global NGOs, and also one of our main event, the Race for 7, is a mass awareness event which being run every year on February on account of our World Rare Disease Day. And we are also into medical education. Most of the things being done in Karnataka have been highlighted by previous speakers. So I am going to brief the patient journey and how all it began in Karnataka. So initially in 2011, for my own daughter, I got an information that there are no such scheme in the government. Then again in 2013, when I applied for a Chief Minister Relief Fund for myself and for other patients, it was only meant for PPL. So in background of this, in 2011, we gave the first letter to CM with a patient for request for LSD corpus fund of 50 crore. This is the first initiative we started way back in 2011. Later on, we also took the support of ITBT and had an opportunity to present our case in a meeting held in Center of Human Genetics and presented similar request to ITBT secretary. Later on, which Kiran Majumdar Shah, who was a chairperson for Karnataka Vision Group, pushed this for a policy in the state, and there was a draft policy prepared way back in 2016, and we were supposed to have that policy, but later on there was an initiative from the central government and probably kept on hold. Then again, in 2013, we submitted first request of 9 children for LSD treatment in Karnataka, and also subsequently, similar request was made for 40 children for treatment in Karnataka. While we continued our awareness program through Pompey Foundation, LSDSS, and PID Society, through press conferences, patient meeting, and fundraising, and also conducting various CME programs jointly with PID and other associations. Then the big thing was the peace protest, where more than 40 families came from across Karnataka who had applied for the government, waiting for more than 3-4 years since 2013. Then there was a huge media support and well covered, and I thought our message was loud and clear to the government, seeking help to save our children. And thanks to media support who supported us and helped us to expand and create awareness in Karnataka about the need of patients, and immediate need of treatment. Then there was some good news in 2014, where rare disease word was first included in the budget based on the request by Health Minister, and also to set up a special rare disease cell with a request of 20 crore budget, and it was announced in the budget accordingly. But while our request continued with several requests to government for providing the treatment, and also there were certain questions in the assembly by various MLAs in Karnataka who supported us and raised this question by Aurad, Koratgere, various cities of Karnataka, and our voice was heard. And this is also basically to treat rare disease patient in Indira Gandhi as it was budgeted. And also based on that ITBT Secretary's request and Kiran Majumdar, there are certain meetings held. And this is one more official thing where rare disease being discussed in Karnataka government. But finally, the patient group like LSDSS and took the judicial support. And when a PIL was filed in 2015, in the month of June, we got an interim order. And immediately on 2016, 1 crore was released. That is where the treatment has started. Until date, roughly around 40 crore have been allocated, by Karnataka, which is again, as all of you know, it's one of the first state who has supported us treatment for rare disease. And also similarly, similar request filed in ESI.
Your slides are not changing. Your slides are not moving.
Oh, I have changed it. Now?
Not yet. We are still getting the cover slide. I could see that you have about 22 slides.
Oh, is it?
Yes, now we are on slide number 10.
No, yeah, it is not.
Yeah. And sir, kindly go fast.
No,
we need
judicial support slide is there? Okay, yes.
some good news.
Then similarly, as mentioned previously, hello?
We are on slide
CID
number
also
10.
got support. Oh my God. I'm
we
not
are
able
on,
to see the slides, because...
Yeah, we are on slide number 10 for
Okay,
you.
then there was a... Okay. Now? Is it moving?
No, we are still on 10. Which slide are you talking about, sir?
Now I'm on 14 slide.
14. Yeah,
1-4.
now we are on 14. Yes, it's 1-4 now.
Okay. So finally, based on the court order, there is a hope, and we also filed PIL for adult Pompe patient, where court order came, and this is where the dream came true for all the Karnataka patients who have made several trips to the Vidhan Saudha, and also there was a special center set up in Indira Gandhi with the support of ORDI and also CHG. Today, more than 80 patients of LSD and PID are taking treatment. And this is one of the first center in India which is exclusively treating rare disease patients. So finally, there is a positivity, and there are many positive lives which has changed the lives of the children they have saved, and it is our duty to thank that the Karnataka government similarly take more support and similarly take more initiative to support our children and help us to save our children with deadly diseases like rare diseases, and also similarly thanking ESI and other things. So there is a smile on few select patients, but still a long way to go. And while we continue our race for 7, which is mass awareness, so far 30,000 people have ran and supported us. And again, this year being conducted on 28th of February, and this is virtual. I take the opportunity to request all of you to join this through www.racefor7.com. And there is a huge support of everyone, and whatever we have achieved in Karnataka, it is a clear message of teamwork where all stakeholders work together and we are able to achieve this. Finally, I would like to say two things. Since Karnataka is the first to have a draft rare disease policy and treatment in Karnataka, I request them to implement the state rare disease policy while national policy can come and complement it. And also, it is better if they form a stakeholder committee to discuss and support rare disease initiative in implementation in the state. Thank you so much, and our rare journey continues. Thanks for the opportunity, Mohammed.
Thank you so much, Mr. Prasanna. Thank you. Moving on to the next speaker, we have Dr. Arun Shastri, Chief Scientific Officer, Dystrophy Annihilation Research Trust, DART, Bangalore. I would request you, sir, to be very crisp. We are running out of time badly.
Yeah. Hi, I'll just share my screen. Greetings from Dystrophy Annihilation Research Trust. We are a parent-run NGO. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah. So we are a parent-run organization formed by Duchenne muscular dystrophy parents, and there was nothing happened in India. No pharma company, no hospital, no doctor trying to come out with some therapy. So a group of parents affected with Duchenne muscular dystrophy, they started this organization in 2012, and I am the chief scientist. I got this opportunity to start working on the. I'm not able to move my slide.
You need to put it on full screen so that you could move your slides.
Yeah. Okay. So DMD is a rare disease, but not so rare, because in India we are expecting more than 3 to 5 lakh children affected with this, and basically the children go into the wheelchair by the age of 8 or 9, and they die because of cardiorespiratory failure. So it's a very life-threatening problem. And currently the management includes steroids and physiotherapy and others. There are some therapy available, of course not in India but abroad, and it's very expensive because it comes to more than 2 crores per year per child for a 20 kg child. And unfortunately, none of these drugs are also available, so no Indian patients can have access, unlike other disorders where people have been able to import. And I'm appreciating that the government has also waived off GST and others. But even if somebody can afford this, how to get it is a question. That's why a group of parents had to do it. We formed this organization. We started as a small research group. We developed this, and I'm very proud to say that now we are Atmanirbhar, and through Make in India, we have made this drug in India, made by Indians, made for Indians. And we want to serve the DMD community through this. And we have been, helped by government agencies like Government of Karnataka, ICMR, SERB, and other funding agencies to develop this research. But of course, research needs a lot of money to take it to clinic. Now, this technology which we are working is an oligonucleotide based technology, wherein it's called exon skipping, and basically it's a personalized medicine. And dystrophin, which is the largest gene in the body, has got 79 exons, and each of the patient has got a unique mutation. So this requires the need for personalized medicine. I'm very proud to say that we have our own GMP compliant manufacturing facility set up under the Startup Karnataka initiative, where we have our own manufacturing unit which has got the GMP license. And to tell that we were the first to do the clinical trial on a single patient with the help of ICMR, and this was done on a patient called Karanveer at Baptist Hospital with help of Dr. Agnes Matthew, Meenakshi Bhatt. So in this, we did the treatment on this patient for a year, and we got the confidence that this drug was safe and efficacious. This led for us to submit a pan-India based clinical trial application, and we have received the approval from the Indian FDA, that is DCGA, to conduct clinical trials on 9 sites across India in 8 different cities. This is the first clinical trial for exon skipping in India, and although there has been a lot of trials and things happening all over the world, but we are the first to do it here. And what do we need? We need now funding, because a lot of parents have put in their hard-earned money to develop this technology. But now we need support from government and all the stakeholders present in this conference to help us to get this therapy into every possible DMD patient in India. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Shastri. It's very encouraging. Single patient trial, and that too, first of its kind in India. Congratulations on that. We hope more positive movements would happen around that. Moving on to our next speaker, we have Mr. Suyog Sathe, LSDSS National Youth Coordinator and Maharashtra State Coordinator. Mr. Sathe, I would request you to be as crisp as possible. We are already overshooting our timelines. Apologies for this request. Over to you.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thanks to the organizers for giving me this opportunity. I'm Suyog Sathe, working as the National Youth Secretary, and I'm also a patient of one of the rare diseases myself.
Mr. Sathe, sorry to interrupt you.
Yes?
Can you please close the chat window?
Okay, just a second.
Yeah, close the chat window. Put your screen on full screen so that we could have your more.
Yes, I'm already on full screen.
It's already on full screen.
Okay, I think there is some delay.
Yeah, probably a lag. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, so as I mentioned, I'm a patient of rare disease myself. It's called Gaucher disease, and it's a type of LSD, which typically causes enlargement of spleen and liver and anemia, as you can see in the picture on the left. So after much struggle because of the lack of awareness amongst doctors, I was diagnosed at the age of 5 years in 1997. And the treatment for this disease is very expensive, and it costs about 50 lakhs to 2 crores annually, depending on the patient's body weight. But fortunately, I started receiving this therapy through a company's charitable access program in 1999. And thus I became the first patient of Gaucher disease to be diagnosed and treated in India. So at present, I lead a completely normal and productive life with no limitations whatsoever. To talk about some of my activities, I have graduated in engineering and I work in a private organization in Mumbai. I also work at SDSS as a volunteer. I'm a director and regional manager for South Asia for the International Gaucher Alliance. And recently, I have also been appointed to the panel of experts for WHO's Collaborative Global Network for Rare Diseases. So to talk briefly about the LSDSS, it was founded in 2010 by like-minded parents and caregivers as a support group for LSD patients in India. It has the objectives to persuade the central and state governments of India to provide long-term financial support for the treatment of LSD patients, and also to raise awareness through activities like observing the International Rare Disease Day, Gaucher Day, Pompe Day, MPS Day, CMEs, and various media awareness campaigns. And LSDSS is also a member of international organizations such as the International Gaucher Alliance. So to talk about some of our activities and achievements, since our foundation, we have been consistently working with the central government on the formulation of rare disease policy, and we have been a part of the advisory committee. Through intervention of the judiciary, LSDSS has been able to sensitize the governments of several South Indian states like Karnataka and Kerala, and we have been able to get favorable judgments in our to treat patients suffering from LSDs. So we have about 40 LSD patients who are being treated with government support in these states. And around 100 children from South Indian states are also getting treatment under charitable access programs of various pharma companies. We have also managed to persuade some PSUs, armed forces, and ESIC to initiate treatment for some of our patients who are children of employees and beneficiaries. And ESIC is also currently treating 24 patients under judicial orders. And I'm happy to say that they have also recently started considering eligible patients directly without any judicial intervention under the right to health. So we have some recommendations to make for the central as well as the state governments. So regarding the rare disease policy, the central government should be urged to urgently reconsider its ill-conceived and impractical proposal of setting up a crowdfunding platform for the treatment of group 3 rare diseases, which, as you know, require prohibitively expensive lifelong treatment, and they should immediately allocate funds under the along with the states for the treatment of these patients according to the well thought out original NPTRD 2017. Also regarding the funding, LSDSS strongly recommends the states as well as the union territories of India to create funding provisions for rare diseases in their respective health budgets, and also to seek contribution from the central government under the National Health Mission. So to talk about the quantum of the burden, although the treatment is expensive, there are only a handful of patients in each state who are actually eligible for the definitive treatment. So as such, the actual burden on the state is quite lower than one would imagine, and hence it is feasible. So the eligible patient should be selected in an unbiased way based on the recommendation of expert doctors and should be approved by a medical cum technical committee for each state. Also, the South Indian states have a particularly high incidence of genetic rare diseases due to the higher rate of consanguineous marriages. So it is very important that the state governments aggressively work on increasing the awareness amongst the general population and also make genetic and prenatal screening mandatory to prevent such births, which will in turn reduce the financial burden on the state. Also, awareness should be improved amongst the medical community through educational programs and also among the students by amending the medical curriculum to give due emphasis to rare diseases. Also, it is very important that both the central and state governments focus on research and development and invest sufficiently in this aspect. As on a whole, India lags behind considerably towards R&D, and investment in R&D can lead to the development and invention of new indigenous as well as generic treatment options, which will be much cheaper than imported drugs. Also, the government should ensure that rare disease patients are not deprived of insurance coverage by health as well as life insurance companies on the pretext of having a pre-existing disease, as this leads to additional financial burden on such patients besides the expense of managing their existing rare disease. And also, life-saving drugs for rare diseases should be exempt from taxes like GST and customs duty. So to conclude, rare disease patients may be few in number, but their life is as important as anyone else. The central and state governments of India are obligated to treat rare disease patients irrespective of the cost of treatment under the constitutional right to health. And also, as a member of the United Nations, India is obligated by the UN resolution for achieving universal health coverage 2030, which cannot be achieved by excluding rare disease patients. Most rare disease patients can lead completely normal or near normal lives if diagnosed and treated on time. And so it is, and they can also be productive citizens contributing to the growth of the country. So they should not be considered as a burden on the state. And the government should also work with pharma companies on lowering the prices of drugs and also promote R&D to develop indigenous treatments. And lastly, the government should focus on increasing the awareness amongst the medical fraternity as well as the general public alike. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Suyog. That was a very passionate appeal to everyone. And of course, the stakeholders are listening. Your achievements are also quite motivating for everyone who is fighting out a life with a rare disease, and for others who are empathetic towards such a journey. Thank you so much for that. Moving on to our next speaker, Dr. Razina, co-founder and director, Patient Services Cure SMA Foundation of India. Over to you, madam. My apologies again, need to be very short, very crisp. We are already overshooting time by almost an hour.
A very good afternoon to one and all. Especially thankful to PPHF for giving this opportunity. I'm quickly moving to the slides. This is just to show how patient advocacy is helping the rare disease patients. The left side is a patient who's not got any support from any patient group. That is, unfortunately, she didn't get aligned with any patient group. And on right side is spine surgery at the right time, directed to the direct department at the right time, and she got spine surgery done without much deformities, and she is leading a healthy life. On the left side, the patient, she didn't get much benefit. This is what happens if there is no direction, no guidance properly. And here is the role of patient advocacy in rare diseases. That is, we add to reduce the impact of rare diseases in patients' lives. And like in most of the rare diseases, SMA is also a chronic, life-threatening neurodegenerative disease that is affecting multi-systems. So we need a multidisciplinary approach to treat this disease. So quickly moving to the patient journey. I'm just showing a patient journey versus two patients who got novel treatments under compassionate use. This is 4 years old, weak type 2 patient, Uvantika from Tamil Nadu. Up to her 8 months of age, she was perfectly normal. But after that, after attaining her crawling stage, there was a progressive delay and she could not attain self-sitting. If we make her sit, she was able to sit, but she could not get into a sitting for standing or walking. And she was prone to recurrent respiratory tract infections. Recently also, she got affected with a very severe respiratory tract infection. That is why her case is presented here. When she got admitted to the hospital, she was having severe respiratory distress and hypoxemia, which could not get resolved with HNFC. So she was given BiPAP support and she was on NG feeds. But with swallow study, she was revealed to have very severe risk of aspirations. So to save her life, she had to undergo gastrostomy placement. And this is what happens with SMA. Many of the patients are affected with feeding and breathing issues. In type 1 cases, it is almost always there. And most of the time, the life is claimed by SMA. And in type 2 cases also, as the disease progresses, the situation worsens. And this is what happens. But here is a contrast. A patient journey who got access to medicine. This is Diya Shankar, type 1 SMA from Kerala. She is of 3 years age. And the disease started very early in her. In her 4 months of age, she lost complete loss of her lower limb movements, and she couldn't attain a neck control, and had severe lower respiratory tract infections, feeding issues, and breathing issues, which are very common with SMA patients. And last year, that is in February 2020, she had a very severe infection for which she was hospitalized under ICU care for more than 15 days. But with HFNC and NG feed, that got resolved. And luckily, before the next infection, I am stressing here before the next infection because any infection can claim the life of an SMA type 1 child. So before the next infection, she got risdiplam under compassionate use, a drug that is approved for all ages by US FDA. And after 7 months of treatment, this is the difference we are seeing. That is, she is able to sit unsupported for half an hour, and she attained her neck control. And now she is able to roll on. She has started rolling on over the floor, and there is no respiratory infection, which is most important. And here on right side is Gayatri. Before 3 months, she got gene therapy under compassionate use only. These were not funded by anyone, any government, but under compassionate use. And the child was not able to sit straight even. Now she is able to stand with the support. So this is what we have to convey. That is, with novel medicines, our children are improving, not only saving their life, but these life-saving medicines are changing the ability they are having, and they may be able to lead a near normal life. And a very quick mapping of our journey till date. We evolved as a very small group of SMA patients, and by 2018, in 2014, we evolved as a small group, and by 2018, we registered as a trust, that is Cure SMA Foundation of India, with the support of like-minded people. Now we are here with almost all states. We are having state coordinators in almost all the cities. Major cities, we are having city coordinators to coordinate the work in the regional level. And with the scientific advisory board and the 22 doctors in our task force, with the help of them, we are able to have access to all the 3 approved drugs in India, but under compassionate use. That is also for a very few number of patients. The government was also very supportive for getting access to compassionate use programs. So you can see in the picture on left side. And till date, for this access programs, the government was supporting us, but we haven't got any SMA patients till date with support from government for the treatment expense. And these are our activities, that is building awareness and patient support. We work with HCPs and liaise with political bodies and also with farmers. That is to get access to our long-term goal and short-term goal we have set, and to get access to the patients, access to medicine, and to start indigenous research here. And we are proud of Tira, our 5 months old SMA daughter, who could raise 16 crore, and very much thankful to the government for waiving off the 6 crore customs duty for her. But we have 500 plus Tiras with us, more than 200 from South India, and from a single state, that's from my own state. Last year, SMA claimed 9 precious lives. So this is a race against the clock. So we need an urgent solution, that is medicines approved for all ages, for all types of SMA, because we are losing precious lives. The Zolgensma, it is a very much effective, a wonderful drug, but that is approved only for less than 2 years of age. And the fund request Tira made it go viral, but in all cases it will not happen, we fear. So we need a sustainable solution. Now, our real hope is a medicine that is effective for all ages, that is scientifically proven effective for all ages, that is supported by the government, because all those medicines, they are orphan drugs, which are very costly with exorbitant price tag. They are coming, but they are effective and can save the life of SMA children. So in 2021, May, June, we are expecting the launch of oral drug here. So we need government support. So this is what we need. That is, when we are having medicine, we are having medication, we are able to see the changes in the lives of our children. They are able to get up from their wheelchairs. They are able to get up from their bedridden stage into ambulatory self-dependent stage. And SMA is not claiming their lives if we are giving the medicine at the right time. So, is it right to deny the children their chance to live?
Thank you, Dr. Razina. That's a very
thank you.
note to summarize the entire journey of SMA patients, and we get to see how drugs can work wonders in bringing these children back to normal life. Thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you all the panelists on this session for sharing the patient stories. These are very motivating and encouraging. The journey thus far has been, we had consultations in different parts of our country, and this leads us to the global consultation that is scheduled on 28th of February, for which everyone is registering. I again take this opportunity to thank all the panelists for this session, Dr. Zarina, Dr. Shastri, Dr. Shirol ji, and Suyog. So this has been a good experience sharing. Thank you so much for joining us on this. Moving on, next we have Mr. Gopal Agrawal, who is the head Market Access, Public Affairs and Patient Advocacy at Takeda. As I was sharing, that the journey thus far has been quite exciting. Regional consultations leading to a global consultation. So I request Mr. Agrawal for his sharing his wisdom on the initiative's journey so far and aspirations.
Yeah. Thanks, Dr. Mohatra. I think great moderation leading to such healthy discussions in all the last 3 roundtables, what I've been hearing. And before I say my thoughts, I would also like to extend my thanks to PPHF for conducting such a great initiative starting from conceptualization to exclusion. And I'm sure this will go a very long way in strengthening care for rare disease in India. Definitely would like to extend my thanks to the core committee members who are working at the back end, eminent participants, especially Dr. Mudrika Kabala, state governments, representatives, patient organizations, industry bodies, and all speakers and participants for their insights and commitment. As we have been hearing, rare diseases are no longer rarer. They definitely need a priority attention before it impacts the society at large. And for that, we definitely need a paradigm shift in the mindset of all the stakeholders for rare disease, which can be done primarily by increasing awareness, improving diagnosis, early access to treatment to save every precious life. And real life example we have of Tierra, which we have seen, and how wider awareness one single example has brought, and we all feel, yes, every life should be saved. And I'm sure this can be done, as we heard in last roundtables, by leveraging existing best practices. There are multiple. We have seen so many best practices, and all these collectively can become a great examples. Leverage technology. I think COVID era has really shown a great path. Affordable diagnostic ways, creating more education awareness through technology. And we need to partner across the patient journey. It's not like the one only or a treatment or a diagnosis. I think we all need to collaborate, partner across the patient journey. And for that, I think at Takeda, we are committed for better health for our patients, which are suffering for rare disease or for complex diseases. Takeda is committed to definitely this cause and such initiative which PPHF has been organizing. And this journey, if I want to think back, it started maybe around 18 months back or a year back with the first draft rare disease policy which was published. PPHF could get the stakeholders together on the national platform, followed by a national webinar on a resilience approach towards rare disease policy in August 2022. So I definitely want to compliment the host and co-host because COVID would have created a vacuum, but such initiatives which need a very sustained and continuous efforts, which are possible by each of or every stakeholder in the last 3 roundtables. And I look forward that this journey continues. But we have just started, it's not the end. And I see multiple millions of lives could be saved. And for that, we invite each one of you for the global consultation, which is happening on 28th Feb. And I wish each one of all the best. We commit that we are together in resolving the challenge for rare disease in India, for a better health for each and every patient with rare diseases. In the last line, I'll say, together we can make a big difference in the life of our patients. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, sir, for that very nicely summarizing summary that you provided, and also for those encouraging words. I'd like to thank all our esteemed panelists, respected speakers for the day, for sharing their wisdom. Thanks to the audience for staying with us, even if we overshot our timelines by much duration. I thank the technical support team in the back end, which is supporting us. Once again, urge everyone to register for the global consultation we're having on the 28th of February. You'll find the registration link on the lobby. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, and take care. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.